My first plug was this Mexican guy that lived next door to my brother. All I did was just get an 8-ball from him. I want to say within the first month, I'm already pushing ounces. I didn't know I went to school with a Colombian cartel family. He says, I can get it on any ship you want out of this country. Anyway, it's up to you to get it off. I said, I got that.
Jason Votrobek grew up as a good old boy off of the coast of Vero Beach, Florida. He fell into the cocaine trade right out of high school, and by the time he was 19 years old, he was moving multi-kilo shipments in association with Mexican cartel groups based out of Texas. But after a series of grisly murders, Jason lost that connect and turned to a more old-school, unlikely source for his cocaine, Colombia. After much trial and error, Jason and his crew figured out how to smuggle in 100-kilo shipments inside of private fishing vessels from Freeport, Bahamas, right into the coast of eastern Florida. Jason is a student of the drug trade. I've never heard anyone articulate drug trafficking, drug smuggling, and the intricacies of the cat and mouse game that they play with law enforcement every day better than him. Make sure to check out his TikTok where he breaks down his journey clip by clip. It's one of my favorite accounts. After making untold millions of dollars, Jason did the remarkable thing and retired from the drug game. But his odyssey doesn't end there. He went on to become one of the biggest Oxycontin operators in South Florida, making $4 million a month operating pain pill clinics in the early days of the American opioid epidemic. This, not the cocaine, is eventually what did him in and landed him in prison for over a decade. If you want to hear that story, I highly recommend you check it out over on Patreon. Patreon.com/TheConnectShow. All right, no more chit chat. There is so much to get to in this episode. One of the most fascinating interviews I've done in a long time. Jason Votrobek, right here on The Connect with Johnny Mitchell.
I had these dive tanks made. We'd put the drugs in there and I'd slide the plastic back on. We're making these small runs and we keep coming back. Never get pulled over, never have no issues. And a lot of people don't understand. I don't know if you know how easy it is to get through customs. This car pulls up and these dudes jump out and they grab me. I had my gun in my back pocket of my pants and just grabbed him and I put it in his head and I was like, I'll blow his brains out right now. And that's when I was like, I'm over it. They're going to get me eventually.
This is after you had a gun to your head, been kidnapped, all that shit. Yeah. But you weren't really a violent guy.
No, not at all.
It doesn't seem like that. I think you were just bluffing.
No, I'm just.
I mean, everybody's got guns.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just that crazy ass country white boy from Florida. You know what I'm saying? That grew up in the citrus cattle town. You know what I'm saying? Small. I'm a small town country boy.
Where in Florida?
Vero Beach, Florida.
Is that the west or the east coast?
It's on the east coast. It's about an hour and a half north of West Palm Beach. We're known for Indian River County citrus. So you see Indian River County fruit, all citrus, oranges, grapefruit, stuff like that. It's known nationwide. So it's a small town. I mean, when I grew up, majority of the town had blinking lights, not, regular lights. Yeah. You wouldn't think that on the east coast of Florida. So I'm central between West Palm and Daytona.
Did you have drug trafficking in your family?
Yes and no. So nobody in my family is a drug trafficker. My dad was asked to run drugs because my whole town is built on the tri-counties. So it would be Okeechobee, St. Lucie, and Indian River County is all done drug smuggling. So I don't know if you watched the documentary Cocaine Cowboys.
Obviously.
So they would fly the planes past Miami, come up our way, land, then take the drugs back to Miami and distribute it out however they're going to do it. Because it was all country, small towns where our sheriffs were involved. Literally, I can tell you stories. My mom and my dad can tell you stories where the sheriff cars are waiting for the plane to drop to throw the drugs in and to take them where they need to go. That's how small everybody was involved. Sometime in the 80s, law enforcement, DEA shows up in our hometown and starts taking all the big players out. Literally everybody goes down. So growing up, a lot of my friends, family members and people were sent to federal prison. Other people did it. It all started, which is crazy because I'm working on a deal. And when I told them this story, they were just like, we love it. It's absolutely crazy. And I didn't think the black dude out of Chicago would love this story. I remember being 5 or 6 years old around a campfire and they were talking about how a plane just went down recently in the late 80s. And it clipped the top of the trees. They had it on autopilot. So they put it on autopilot and they're kicking the cocaine out. And it clipped the top of a tree and crashed. One of the pine trees was too tall or taller than the rest of them. And somehow it clipped it. And the guy that was in there, one of the guys that died was my mom's high school sweetheart. That she would had a high school sweetheart type thing. So, I remember hearing the story around the campfire, and the story was actually pretty wild because he was like, dude, you're sick in the head or something's wrong, because the guys, from what I understand, from the story I heard, is they clipped, both of them lived, but they were mangled pretty bad. So when they went over there, they were like begging for their life, and they were like, we won't tell, just drop us off somewhere, I promise we won't say nothing. And one guy was like, we can't let this happen. So they drenched the whole plane and them in gas and lit it on fire. And covered up. They all got away with it, but that's when the feds came into and started investigating everybody. And I think that was like the fall of everything. Because I remember as a kid when I was young, late 80s, they really started like coming in and started taking people and arresting everybody.
Yeah. So kind of like how the saltwater cowboys, the big pot smugglers who we've filmed with for this channel on the West Coast, same thing. The whole town was involved. Even if they're not directly involved in trafficking, everybody knows what's going on. And yeah, the feds came in and pretty much just shut the route down, and that was it. So it sounds like kind of the same thing happened in your county with cocaine. Everybody, it was in the culture. It sounds like you grew up where it wasn't that taboo.
No, it wasn't.
Right.
Everybody knew everybody's business, what was going on. And that's what was so cool about it, because, and here's another issue that, I wish I'd have known, because I would have probably done things differently or not got into it and idolized it so much, is because as a young kid, like my grandparents were pretty well off, and we lived like on a couple of roads that were like all rich people, like lawyers, like doctors and everything else. My grandparents did. So the next door neighbors was a big time lawyer in town that like represented all of them. And I remember, and they said he was involved as a young man. And I remember him having like a Lamborghini back in like 87, 88, ripping donuts in front of, the house in the main street and stuff back in those days. And they would have huge parties over there. Like it was out of control. And I just remember being like 6 years old at a time, like seeing this stuff. So, but I didn't hear and understand, like in the 80s, I don't know if you probably heard stories, but all the way up to like 86, somebody would get busted or something would come down and they would just be like, hey, we'll pay you $1 million to go turn yourself in, take the hit, because they get 5 years for 20, 30, 50, 100 kilos. It didn't matter. They get like 3 to 5 years back in those days.
And you could parole out of the feds too.
So, people were like, okay, I'll take $1 million, shut my mouth, and we'll give you a job as soon as you get out. So, I didn't hear none of this stuff. So here I'm a young man idolizing this and like watching all the movies, movie Blow when it came out, Cocaine Cowboys, the whole thing, everything else. So, it's just like, it was my life, hearing all the stories when I was a kid. So I didn't realize they changed the laws and they figured out how to get everybody to cooperate. When you're looking at 30 years, everybody does. So I didn't realize that's how they were getting everybody in my hometown and how they shut the whole thing down. Okay.
So you come up in my era, the early 2000s, 90s, early 2000s, you do a little like juvenile bid for some stupid.
Yeah, I started getting into the weed game because my buddies, when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, what do? They start smoking pot. So here I am. I used to like mow yards and do all kinds of stuff and to make side money and do things because I was always in, wanting to make money. So I had some money saved up. I ended up buying I went into the little hood. So I went to school with these kids that I played sports with, and they're like, yeah, my brother, sells pot. So I'm like, okay, so go up in there, and they like sell me this bunk stuff. I didn't know what I was doing. They just took advantage of me. Put a little nice stuff, made it look more green, and had all these sticks and seeds on the inside and everything else. So I buy it. I get screwed over. Nobody wants to buy it, so I buy some different stuff, try to mix it in. Still kind of causes a problem. Well, these kids were stealing four-wheelers and stealing all kinds of stuff, just doing dumb. And they would keep them in the woods out by where I lived. So we go out there and ride them and stuff. But then, here I am in the game. I start talking to some of these guys about like, hey, you want to buy some four-wheelers and dirt bikes and stuff? And they're like, hell yeah. So I start selling them to them, giving them the connect, and I just get a little bit of money out of the deal. Well, they get hit. I want to say they stole somebody like really big in our hometown, their four-wheelers, a boat motor or something. I don't remember. And they get hit and they try to put it all on me because I had bought some stolen dirt bike plastics, for a dirt bike, the plastics on it that had, better graphics, different colors. So I was like, hell yeah, I'll take them. Didn't realize it'd come back and bite me in the ass. So they put that on me. I took it to trial. I beat everything besides the dealing of stolen property. But you don't have a jury. You do it by judge. And the judge was like, I still think you had more involvement. So he gave me an 8-month program, which turned out to be 18 months. Program. And it was Martin County Boot Camp. And then I just couldn't make it. So I kept having problems. I I ended up going from there. I caught, I think, 2 or 3 battery charges on Leo's for fighting. And then I went to another place, got in a fight with another inmate. And the problem of it is that they wouldn't charge you for fighting the inmates, the other kids. It's just when they come and break it up, if you elbow them or just literally anything, they charge you with battery.
Yeah. When
So
you
I
elbow the cops.
Yeah, like you're fighting, they're jumping in on you. So it's not like I was hitting the cops. So I ended up catching like, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 battery charges in that time. I kept working my way up to these higher programs. And so I ended up graduating pretty much because I timed out at 18 years old. So I did almost all my high school in juvenile.
It's wild. Yeah, you graduated high school.
I did
out of the
graduate.
juvenile facility.
I did. I walked in a purple gown from Washington County, got a high school diploma and everything out of juvenile, which is crazy. Like people are like, "Where did you graduate?" I'm like, "High school."
Yeah.
Like, "What high school?" I'm like, "Washington." They're like, "Where's that at?" I'm like, "Panhandle, Florida, somewhere."
Yeah. So you already had this like brolic, like institutionalized experience at a really young age, and then you come out. And you try to, I guess you tried to turn yourself around. It doesn't seem you tried very hard, but that's okay.
I did try. I didn't want to go back because I don't know if you ever heard the stories. Juvenile is way worse than state penitentiaries, federal penitentiaries. I don't care what it is.
Especially in Florida.
They're out of control because they're called state babies. A lot of people don't realize like most of the kids that are coming in there, their dad's in prison. Mom's a crackhead.
Yep.
They have nowhere to go. Nobody in the family wants them. So they're called state babies. So they're going to graduate. They've been raised in the juvenile system and they end up going straight to, adult prison. Like they're not going home.
They call them JIT camps.
Yeah, they're called JIT camps. Yeah. And when I tell you them boys are out of control, like I've never seen nothing in my life. And you got to realize I come from a small town, didn't have none of these problems, and they stick me in a zoo. And I was just like, you got to be me. Like,
but your instinct for survival and evolving even in a bad situation kind of speaks to your character and later on how you evolved in this crazy story with the drugs that would come out of it.
It took the fear out of it. I mean, you probably talked to a lot of people. Once you've been in the prison, like there's nothing to fear no more.
I agree.
The whole like not knowing and being scared of what's going to happen. And you hear all these stories, how bad prison is. It's the half of what it really is.
And then you contemplated a bid for actually selling dope. You're like, okay, if I do a little 5-year jump, I can do that if I make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's how you calculated life, which I used to do. I don't think it's worth it anymore.
No.
But back in the day, I was like, yeah, if I can make $2 or $3 million moving pot and they gave me about like 4 in the feds, like I could do that. I could play tennis and eat ice cream.
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know the feds. I thought I would go to state prison. I didn't know nothing about the feds. I'm not going to lie.
But that's how people talk about prison. People value their lives so little and time so little that they're like, oh yeah, I got $1 million, dude. I'll sit down for 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
That was like me.
That's like a 12th of your life, 15th of your life.
Yeah. But think of how much work you got to do to make $1 million.
Yeah.
And you don't even get it all in one thing. You get little pieces of it. And so at the end, you still got that little paycheck because I'd rather have it all in one thing and be able to do something with it to get that jump up. That was my whole thing.
Yeah.
My way of thinking was when I got out, I wanted to do everything right. But you got to realize I get out. Now, all the kids that I grew up with that had been out are established a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like they've already got a vehicle. They got a good job. They went to college, or going into college, whatever it was. So I had to catch up. So here I am working probably $9, $11, $12 an hour, doing whatever. And I'm barely making it. I don't want to live with my parents. So I moved in with my brother. And I had good intentions. I didn't want to go. I'm like, dude, if prison's like that, I don't want to go back. And like how it always starts. It always starts as, time goes by and what happens? You forget. That wears off. All that stuff just goes right out the door. So, I had good intentions. And then where it all started is my next door neighbor and my brother. There was this girl that lived there, and this guy would show up, and I'd never forget. He had this Dodge, and he would always show up in like 26s and system and that. And I'm just like, nope, boy.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, dude, I used to ask, just wave at him, casual conversation. And once I got in the game with him, I was just like, why are you doing it? Like, you got jewelry, big gold, everything. I'm just like, why?
That's his business card, though. That's how
he got me. I never thought about it
exactly
that way.
That's a business card, and that's how you advertise.
Yeah, but it's just like me buying, a hoopty car riding around, messing with the police when they pull me over and see a white boy clean like me, just messing with them.
No, I'm not saying it's the optimal way to do it.
Yeah.
But this is a Mexican guy in Florida. What do you expect?
Yeah. So, because when I went to prison, I learned that all these black dudes, like they would get big really fast. And I'm like, dude, and he's like, oh, we already know we're coming to prison. So we just go as hard as we can, make as much money as we can. See, they understand the game. I don't. So they taught me the game once I went in. I'm like, well, it's too late now. Like, I'm not doing this again. So what they do is they already know that they're going to be told on. They know they're going to get busted. So they stand on the corner, do whatever, deal with anybody. I'm like, why? And they're like, Jason, we already know we're going to get busted. We already know like that. We understand the game. So he told me, he's like, listen, I'm gonna explain the unspoken game and how it works in the hood. He says, what we do is once we get a good product or whatever it is, we go as hard as we can go. Deal with anybody and everybody. We might get 6 months, we might get a year. I don't know. So what he did, he told me, he's like, we stack that money, we hide it because we know we're going to prison. And they know right off the rip, we're going to give up somebody. And it's an unspoken code in the hood. We just give up some money, they get busted, they give up somebody, and we know this is how it is because we won't get much time. And we get back on streets, we do it again.
Yeah, and it's not a taboo.
It's not a taboo.
Because he told on someone and then he told on someone, and now it's almost like a strategy.
Yeah.
It's almost a strategy for survival.
Telling is just a moral code. It's nothing about the streets, nothing else. It's about how you feel inside about yourself. Because I watched a video and you did something about how the Mexican cartels, there's no code about ratting. It's just business, right? But you want to know what's so funny about that is that once you tell on them, what do they want to do to you?
They want to kill you usually.
Okay, so in prison, so do they check your paperwork, see if you're a rat or not? Of
course.
The same ones that tell on other people, all the cartel guys.
Yeah.
Because I did a thing on, Matt did a clip at the very end about how I was talking about El Barbie. All these guys, and it blows my mind about how, you don't learn and understand, which I wish I'd have known this because I would have been a lot more successful, I felt like, in the game, is because you got to learn and understand how to work the system and know everything about the system to work it. Because if you know you're going into this, that people are in the business to protect their business and not this whole like unspoken code about ratting, I think I would have made it a lot bigger and a lot more successful of how to operate a little bit better.
100%. It's a game, dude. It's chess. So why wouldn't you want to play chess?
Yes.
So forget the moral code. You're criminals. Yes. Your code.
Yep.
The moral code is for, the Bible. Judas told on Jesus, right? Yeah. Like he gave up literally the Lord.
I go to trial on everything just because down deep, it's not embedded in me. It's not about anything else. It's just strictly a whole thing on me about, I mess up, I pay my consequences.
Well, I appreciate that. And we do here at The Connect. Guys, today's episode is sponsored by Ava. Ava is a credit building app that makes it super simple to improve your credit fast. As of this recording today, I just got a call from my bank telling me that they have denied me for a business line of credit. And I'm a little furious about it. And I'll tell you what, if I had Ava and had been using it just for a couple of months, my credit would have been stellar and I would have had hundreds of thousands of dollars in small business credit coming to me. Let me explain. You guys already pay for subscriptions, Netflix every month, rent, your car payment. It's probably on automatic payment getting withdrawn from your bank. Ava reports your on-time payments to all major credit bureaus every day to help you build positive credit history quickly. So all of those payments you make, they're going to report to all of the credit bureaus. So if I had been doing that 3 months ago, I would have had an 800 credit score probably by now, and I would have got approved for that business line of credit. For just $6 a month using Ava, you could potentially save yourself thousands. Yeah, I know that now. Ava is the highest rated credit building app with thousands of 5-star reviews. It's the only credit building app rated excellent on Trustpilot, and it's got an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. Download the Ava app, spelled AVA, today, and when you join using my promo code CONNECT, CONNECT, you'll get your first month free. This offer is only for my listeners. I'm actually about to go download this and use it right now after this ad read. Get the Ava app and use promo code CONNECT to get your first month free. I'm going to use my own promo code and get the first month free. That's promo code CONNECT, CONNECT. Wow, what a cool business. What a great way to build up your credit history by just making the payments you're already making anyways, and for only $6 a month. Thank you, Ava. And now go get yourself some good credit. Who is your first plug? Who put you down?
Okay,
Tell us about it.
My first plug was this Mexican guy that lived next door to my brother. And I was just like, I want nothing to do with this guy because like I was just explaining about the whole thing about the moral code and like, you know, like, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I'm not a spotlight type guy. You'll notice if you ever go back in my thing, you won't see me like dressing fancy or like driving high end cars. Even when I had my money, I didn't do it. I don't like to draw attention on that aspect. So he's riding around on 26s. So, you know, being a young guy, seeing all this stuff, I'm thinking like, yeah, well, why do I want to be associated with him? It's not going to happen. Well, that didn't last very long. So my buddies, there was a drought. So everybody had a hard time getting good stuff. And it was just seemed like there was nothing around. So they were like, man, we can't get nothing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I got somebody. So I seen him. I hit him up and he's like, I got you. So all I did was just get an 8-ball from him. Mm. They get it. They absolutely loved it. They're like, holy shit, get more. I'm like, okay, I got you. So I did it a couple times. Well, you know how it is. You do it a couple times, then they're hitting you up nonstop. And it's just like, why am I doing this for free? Mm. So then it was like, okay, listen, I can't really charge no more than what it is. So I took one of my paychecks and what I did was I bought an 8-ball and I put a little bit on it. So I made 4 grams. So now I have 4 grams. I sold them for $50 a piece. I got $200. I bought it for, I think, $135 or something like that. I can't remember, $150. So I made a little bit of money. I did it again within like 2-hour span. So by then I had a quarter. I didn't want to invest too much of my money. You know what I'm saying? I'm paying rent, everything else. It's just like, I wanted to do it just to make some extra spending money. Mm. And before you know it, I want to say within the first month, I'm already pushing ounces because it's a drought, perfect timing. This stuff is straight off the brick.
And this is a Mexican American guy. He's not a cartel guy.
No, he's not a cartel guy.
Okay, so he's getting it from, who are his plugs?
Okay, so his plug, we got this small town in Florida. It's called Fellsmere, Florida. It's a citrus, strictly farming town. Like it's literally 90% of people are Hispanics, and they're usually seasonal Hispanics.
Right.
So they only come over to pick the vegetables, depending the fruit, whatever is being picked at the time. Then they go home. So it's a seasonal thing. So they're real Mexican, like whatever. So they got
migrant laborers. Yes. Yep.
So that town had a pretty big guy. He would get my dude would probably get 40 to 60 bricks at a time. Like that's the kind of level he was at.
A lot of work.
No, that is a lot of work. People think like that's not a lot of work when you think of like cartel stuff, but this country's built on a bunch of small time guys. It's not huge. There's very few guys that are pushing really big weights.
Very few. 60 kilos would take up this whole table.
Yes. So people got to realize like that is a pretty big guy. I mean, you start doing the math on it. I don't know what his percentage of profit it was, but I mean, the guy was probably getting maybe 100 something kilos at a time. His connect was because
now, is this the Mexican route or is this
is Mexican, all Mexican.
Okay.
So I want to say it's his family. I never ask. I'm not a guy to ask too much because it's always got me in trouble when I was in, juvenile. Just don't say nothing at all. I just know that his guy, he would always talk about my guy. And he was like, one time I was like, hey man, I need 5 bricks. And he's like, you got to let me know in advance because I'm going to get 40. And most of them are already spoken for because he dealt with a lot of dudes in the hood and stuff like that, supplying a lot of I think tri-counties, like most of the hoods. And, I want to say the one time I got 5, he had 60 of them. Okay. So that's how I know these numbers. I'm not sure they're consistent or whatever.
No, but this is good because, in the early 2000s, the Mexican routes are still the dominant routes.
Yes.
The Caribbean route, the Colombia through the islands up to Florida, that's slowed down to like a dribble. Hang on. So I want to paint the picture for everybody. So the cartels still have big presence in Florida, even though they're closest to the Caribbean. This is all going to change coming up. So my question is, you're from a tiny little town. Like where's the market? How are you able to push 5 kilos in these little dusty Florida towns? Who's buying them? Are they people taking them they're taking them to the rest of Florida?
Yes. So I dealt with tri-counties. So, you know what I'm saying? Like literally the counties around me, I've never bought drugs from them ever. They have farmings like that, but our town it seemed like a bigger presence of that. For some reason, I can't answer that question. But yes, I'm dealing with tri-counties. I'm dealing with people all over the place. I even had a Cuban that was up in my town working that was buying pretty good amount of weight and sending it down to Miami. Because a lot of people don't understand. From what I understand, the Cubans have Miami on lockdown and they're not getting much from Cuba. Like, so the Mexicans don't have a lockdown in Miami, which sounds crazy. You would think they do. They have a lock on everything else. Like nothing else from what I'm understanding is coming from the Caribbean besides Miami. Miami, the Cubans having a lockdown down there. And it's mainly coming from Bimini, from what I understand, in Cuba. They're bringing it over, smuggling people, and they have a bunch of drugs. But
they're also bringing drugs from Cuba?
Yes.
Directly from Cuba to Florida?
Cuba.
That is ballsy. From communist Cuba, they're making that little 90-mile hop.
So I don't know if you know the whole story. So I was in with a guy at Oakdale, Louisiana, and he was an old-time drug smuggler. He did his first federal bid in 72. Grady Higgins. You can look him up. Old Jewish dude, long thing, everything. Listen, the dude was crazy. Been to federal prison 3 times. He's doing 27 years on this bid. And he says he's going to go right back to it. It's kind of type thing. And I'm thinking, like, you're crazy. And he's like, it's just my life. And he says, I'm not doing the United States no more. And I just quit asking. I'm like, I'm not asking no more questions. So he would tell me stories. He would fly up, literally, because he knows people from my hometown. And he's from Texas, here. So he said he would fly up, and the route was go over Cuba, the fastest way. And I'm like, and he's like, you know, all you had to do was when the planes, because this is back in the crisis back then, like when they had the standoff, the Cold War. He said when you'd fly over and the jet would come in, he says all you had to do was show them a kilo of cocaine and then point like to America, and they'd give you the thumbs up.
They won't shoot you down. Hey, this isn't military. It's just a drug smuggler.
So they thought it was funny, he said, to allow drugs come into America. So they would turn a blind eye to like hurt America and allow drugs. So they would allow them to fly through their zone. That's what he told me.
I believe it. Well, we know Raul Castro was like big into allowing drug smugglers to move through the island. Yeah. But it makes sense. It's the reason that, you know, China really wants fentanyl coming in. Yeah. It's the reason that they let all they emptied their jails in 81 with the Marielitos, and they brought everybody over. It's like, you know, it's trying to destabilize America. Yep. So but some of your coke that you're getting in this tiny little Central Florida tri-state area is actually making it down for resale in Miami.
That's correct. Not a large amount. He was purchasing about a quarter key at a time and taking out his guys. They wanted more, but it just seemed so shady because they always wanted on the front. You know what I'm saying? Like they never had cash. And I'm just like, nah, like, so I wouldn't do no more.
Well, they're Cubans, they're commies. They're bad with money. Sure. So, but my point is you're getting 5 keys as a 19-year-old. And so you're hitting off a lot of different drug dealers.
Yeah. So you got to remember, like, so my guy dealt with the hood, you know, like certain hoods and stuff. So I had to lock on all the other guys. So he dealt with like a couple guys hood, but you don't realize like how much drugs are being pushed and how much is being, you know, moved around. So the guy that's buying a quarter key, half key, or brick from me, I don't know where they're going. I know one guy was moving it over to like Lakeland. One guy was like, had somebody in like Ocala, you know, like, so they're moving it all over the place. I don't have a clue. All I know is that they would buy, I was selling more on quarter key and half keys than anything else. Don't get me wrong. I broke it down into like, you know, grams and 8 balls for all my high end clientele because I had like the higher end clientele in my hometown, you know, doctors, lawyers, business owners, like a lot of big people. So, and I would charge them extra, you know, and they always wanted it raw. But they were great clientele because you didn't have to worry about them getting busted because it's not like they got messed up and go do something stupid. They would get it and literally go wherever they're going, and that's what they would do.
That's right.
And it was great profit, you know, and it was easy to deal with. They came to you early. They never knocked on your door or your window or blew you up late at night. So it was nice. And then I had my other guys that were buying quarter keys, half keys. Yeah. And people don't realize anybody can be big. Anybody can get on that level so quick. All you have to really do is find a good connect and keep the product good. A lot of people don't realize that bad product will destroy you. But the hardest problem I was having at this point, it was staying consistent, you know, with good product. Because my guy would tell me like, hey, okay, I'm getting, I just got 50 keys of West Coast, East Coast, 5-star. And I'm like, okay. So it would have an arrow pointing like this with 5 stars on the brick. And then we would get like Ferrari, the Mustang horse, the Ferrari horse. We would get the Scorpion. I get
what
the
are the different
bunny.
Stamps. What do the different stamps mean?
Okay. So different stamps means different parts of the country it comes from down there. Different cartels, different parts. I don't know exactly who they come from, but it's their markings. And so a lot of people don't understand also is you can tell the difference between a repress stamp versus a original stamp. And I don't know if you know the difference. It seems to me like down there, if you ever notice a real brick will have a stamp and it's more rounded. And every time I've ever seen a repress one, they're usually like straight, like they're taking a piece of metal and cutting it out or a piece of wood straight, and then they press it, and it's almost like, square edge. And down there, they're more like rounded, looks like somebody sanded it or like did something different, or I don't know how they really do it.
I see. So if it looks too much like a rectangle textbook, somebody might have with it.
Yeah, because down there, they're not. Like, it seems like it's something done in the jungle. So they're not precise. They're always rounded. Like, you have like the wood grain in it. See here, like when they repress, you can tell they do it with something hard and there's not the wood grain. So, that, and I don't know if you ever have heard anybody talk about how usually keys will come in like a thick rubber, like a semi-tire, like rubber, like vacuum sealed type, like crunched, because so it, stays together, doesn't break apart. Like, when they're packaged and moving it through stuff, it doesn't get ripped. It's almost like an inner tube tire for a semi, how thick it is. And it's done. So there's different things that you learn through the process of like, what's a real one, what's a fake one when you start shopping. So the different ones, like, I will tell you this. So like the Ferrari, the Lamborghini, the 5-star were really good. Everybody loved them. I literally got one time that was so pink flake. Like it was like the most pinkest, like it was probably the prettiest key I've ever had in my life.
What is the pink?
I don't know.
What is the pink? In Colombia, they call it tusi, but I think it's different than what you're referring to.
So the pink, from what I understand, comes from Peru. It's a different part of the country, and from what I understand, it's just a different product they're cutting it with, processing it. So probably like a red diesel or something. I don't know. It's just a different way they process it, and it turns it more of a pink tint. But it's so like, I swear to God, it has a look like you never seen before. But nobody liked it.
Really?
Swear to you.
Like they didn't like the look of it, or
no, they loved the look of it, but the taste and the high, they said was horrible.
So did you ever get a big load that you had to just send back or not be able to move?
Yeah, happened a lot.
That sucks.
You get stuck with it because they get stuck with it.
And then your clientele leaves, and then you kind of have to like rebuild your business because people can go anywhere to get work. You know what I mean? Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. Please don't skip ahead. This is not an ad read. This is about a young man who needs our help. His name is Matyas, and he's a longtime fan of the show, and he's suffering from something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a rare illness that causes all kinds of horribly painful symptoms in the body, like craniovascular instability. And what that is basically all the ligaments and the muscle that hold your spine, your head, and your neck together are coming apart. Imagine that. It's a horribly brutal, life-debilitating, life-threatening illness. Now, there's two ways to treat this. The first is with surgery, but nobody wants to do that. It's incredibly invasive and dangerous. The doctors would literally have to open up Matyas's back and work around his spine. And you can imagine the peril that puts him in. They don't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. The better option is getting injections. Matyas needs 5 rounds of injection shots, and he's going to get them from a spinal clinic in Colorado. It's one of the best, in fact, one of the only clinics in the world that treats craniovascular instability. And it's going to cost him about $14,000 per round of injections. So he needs to raise about $60,000. And of course, insurance doesn't want to cover it. Matyas has raised close to $20,000. So he's almost a third of the way there. I've already donated myself. And so I am humbly asking you guys to help out if you can, as little or as much as you feel comfortable with. I'm telling you, the best way to get ahead in life is by giving. I didn't start getting all of these great things happening to me from the universe until I started to give. And I love opportunities to help out, not just a fellow fan, but a fellow human being. The government's not going to help us. Insurance companies aren't going to help us. We have to help ourselves. I've checked out Matyas's paperwork and his doctor's recommendation. It's going to be at the GoFundMe site, so you can see that this is not a scam. It is all legit. To donate, click the GoFundMe link in the description of this episode. I thank everybody in advance, and so does Matyas. All right, let's get back into it. So you're having consistency issues. How long are you going like this, working with your next door neighbor, the Mexican guy?
I worked with him for over a year. And everything with him was great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would get some bad breaks where people are like, hey, that's just not as good as last time. But I've never really got stuck with it where people are like, no, I'm not dealing with it. See, I never stepped on none of my stuff. Once I made it to where I was pushing ounces, I never touched it ever again. Because I wanted the consistency. I wanted the easy business. I didn't want to have to break it down, build it back up, break it down. Like, it wasn't worth it to me. Even though I wasn't making as much as the other guys were and everything else, like I told people, I was making good money. I was making average anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per brick, pushing that. I was making a lot of money per month. And people were like, well, it doesn't add up and this and that. I'm like, well, people wouldn't pay me. I would get stiffed on stuff like, just part of doing business. Not everybody's paying on time. Not everybody's working and, you're spending money. But when I was saying I don't spend money, I meant like blowing it in strip clubs and doing dumb stuff. I just wasn't spending it like that.
Yeah.
So once what happened is something happened in South Florida. They can look it up and research it. There was a family that got murdered, the whole family. So it was husband, wife, and 2 kids. And they were left on side of an interstate in South Florida. So they found the vehicle, 4 bodies just thrown off the side of the road. And literally days later, he disappears.
Your guy.
My guy disappears.
Wow.
From what I understand, he's not directly connected, but apparently it had something to do with his connects people. And as well as I know, which I learned later, I didn't understand at the time, but when somebody does something like that and the feds come in, they're going to round up everybody. Like it's going to be a domino effect that just keeps crumbling.
You got to leave town.
Yes.
Okay.
So they all left town. Everybody did. So it left a big void in like every hood. Like these boys are supplying just about everybody in like Tri-County. So it left an opening like no other. And here I am, one of the biggest guys besides him, and I can't get nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm scratching my head thinking like, I wasn't ready for this to be over. It was too good. Things were running too smooth. So I'm thinking, it ain't gonna be that hard. Let's go figure this out. So it was bad. I literally would run into every issue you can think about from, everybody can say they can get something. I'd be like, yeah. Everybody's a yeah man. I tell people all the time, everybody's a yeah man. So I'm like, okay, well, I got the money. And they're like, well, he ain't answering his phone. I'm like, no, I got the money. You've been telling me you can get it. Let's get it. Oh, okay. And then the next issue I run into, they're like, yeah, I can get 5. They can only get 1. Now they're calling around the 20 different people trying to round up 5. And people don't understand that. So everybody wants to talk about they're pushing 5 or 10, but when you finally ask for it, it's almost impossible to get. I don't know if you know that.
So you went down to Texas?
I've gone to Texas. We were running a steroid operation out of Laredo. We were going across the border, getting steroids and bringing it back. And we had a bad experience one time, and I don't know how they knew or what was going on. We were coming back with a load, and they pulled us over right outside of Houston about 2:00 in the morning. And they searched the vehicle, tore that thing apart forever, could not find it. I had it hidden in the headliner of the car. And I was literally, it was cold. And I remember like hugging inside the fender well of that Chevy Suburban. And I was shaking because they were so close to it. But I was shaking because I was cold, but I was shaking because I'm thinking like, dude, they're right there. We're about to get hit. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like, this is not good. This is not good. And he's like, we know what you're here for. We know what you're doing. We're going to find it. So they tore the cooler apart. They tore everything apart. They had the mirrors. They had that little block thing they run on the tires and run on everything, seeing the condensing of everything. And I just don't know why. They started pulling off plastic pieces inside the car. They were looking everywhere. For some reason, I have no clue why they didn't look in the headliner.
It was testosterone or what was it?
It was testosterone, pills, and everything else. So I was, already connected in Laredo. And I was like, I gave that up. I was like, man, the hell with this. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I thought about, let's go back to Laredo.
Sure.
To do the
coke this time. Right.
So I get a hold of somebody that had a connect out here and they would mail it back to Florida. So they were mailing keys through the mail.
Okay.
And he had told me, he was like, man, you think it's bad back then getting pulled over? He says, it's way worse now. He's like, nobody wants to really haul it out of there. Like, you really got to be plugged in somehow to do it. So I was like, well, that option's out of the table because he's like, I won't even go down there. So what
Talking about nobody wants to haul coke after it crosses the border into Texas, or
yeah. Once it comes into Texas, a lot of people don't want to just haul it in cars. Like you want to. Most people do it through like like semis, shipping containers, other things like that. And I wasn't on the level to do that, and I didn't trust nobody. I wasn't organized to do that.
Right.
And he told me like driving down there, he said. Because I was in the steroid business with him. He had a party. He knew what was going on. He was like, I don't even go down there no more. We have somebody there that puts it in the mail and mails it to us, but that's just a matter of time before that gets busted.
Just because it was so hot already?
It was already so hot. Yeah. They started putting in like different, like coming from certain areas, they started putting different scanners in, from my understanding, like scanning the boxes and everything else and running dogs through all the places. Like they had a team of like certain drug sniffing dogs that would go to certain postal places, and they would just randomly every day go to them and like run the dogs randomly. Right. So they just did random stuff, and that's how they were losing a lot of their drugs.
Right. So
and I'm like, man, this is getting crazy.
So you can't be consistent mailing the keys from Texas to Florida. No. So that option's out.
That's option's
out. Did
out.
you consider going into Mexico? Did you consider flying into Mexico to try to meet one of these groups?
So I was going into Mexico to get the steroids. So I already had a connect to Mexico. Okay. But the problem of it is nobody wanted to help me get the steroids or the coke across the border. They're like, no, you get it. It's your job. Because if we get across the border, why do we need you?
Right.
You're going to pay our prices.
Yeah.
And then it jumped up tremendously once it go across that border. But then a lot of people don't understand. What is it, like 60 miles out or 50 miles out from the border? There's checkpoints on all those checkpoints. No, I didn't know none of that until I went down there.
There's 2 borders.
Yeah, there's 2 borders. So you have border towns and then you have another checkpoint.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So nobody warned me of this. So the first time I went, like we made it to the border fine. Like, what I'm saying? I remember it was like Eminem, like I'm the real Slim Shady type was out. Like, so I'm like bumping, trying to keep my mind off of it a little bit, like get my head going, coming across, because they're great at reading you.
Yeah.
Like they're really good at it. They're watching you. So then when we come to this, we came at the second one. I felt like the second one was harder to get through than the first one. It's like they allow you to come across the first one in the United States because they want you in the United States so they can knock your head off.
Right.
I don't know. I that's just my guess. So,
but the point is, there's no scaling a business through this route.
No,
at
because
this
I'm
time
too small
for you. Yeah.
I'm too small. I'm not organized enough to do it. I'm not going to lie. So I was like, okay, let me work on going to the Cubans. So my Cuban connect was like, hey, guy, I got a pretty good guy down here, blah, blah. Nightmare. They were so good at like taking a key and opening it up in front of me and like letting my boy try some off the top because I didn't do drugs.
Right.
And so they would literally put like a thin layer of coke on the top and like, try it. And then the rest of it straight garbage. Like they had every trick in the book. Like everywhere I went, it was nothing but problems. I got spoiled. Let's just say that. My Mexican connect right out the gate. Like I will say I got lucky.
Right.
So that route just became an issue. And so how I thought about the Bahamas was, first off, my family had a house in Green Turtle. So I've gone over there as a kid. And so I kind of know like how to get across the ocean. And then the second thing was like, well, they're getting it from the island. So why can't I get it? So that's how it came about.
Bingo.
So, but everybody kept telling me like, you can't do that no more. And it was so funny. Like, you can't do that. You can't do it. It's impossible. It's impossible. And I'm thinking like, well, why is it so impossible? So I'm like, well, let's try it.
Yeah. So why was it so impossible? Just because after the 80s cocaine wars, there was so much press around it. There were so many feds that descended onto South Florida and the Caribbean. It was just so heavily policed. Is that why people said it was impossible?
They came down on it so hard in that era that it scared everybody and made everybody believe that's still that way. That's the only thing I can assume. Like everybody was like, the hell with that. Like back then they got everybody and like they were cracking down so hard. And then they talk about like, oh, they got planes that fly all the time. They got radars. You can't just sneak across the ocean. Like da-da-da-da-da. You just hear so many stories.
And also it seems so daunting to try to move product through there because it's so, when you look at it on a map, the Cuba, Bahamas, South Florida, it's all so close. The Texas, Mexico border, the U.S. Mexico border across the Southwest is like 3,000 miles long. Like there's a lot more room to scurry across, it seems like. So it seems like it's way easier for cops and feds.
That's not the problem.
What's the problem?
It's 90 miles to West End, which is Freeport, the island Freeport from out of Jupiter.
Freeport, Bahamas.
So Freeport, Bahamas to Jupiter is 90 miles. Bimini to Miami is 45 miles. What's in between that?
Like an ocean.
What else is out there?
Haitian refugees. I don't know.
Nothing. So when you're coming across a boat and it's flat and there's an island, a country, and a boat coming across and the ocean's flat, dude, you're sticking out like a sore thumb.
Right.
Like people are like, Jay, you're so stupid. Don't even think about it. Like you're literally the only thing coming across there. They're like, you really need to think this out. Like fishing tournaments, busy seasons.
Right.
And like, but I'm like, I'm going to be a drug smuggler. And they're like, you don't pick when you go. So it's like, you have to be just like, you're literally a sore thumb. Like there might be 5 boats coming across that day.
Yeah.
How hard is it for them to intercept 5 boats? It's not.
So you have to hide in plain sight.
Ugh. So
It's like espionage.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay, so it sounds like you had like oceanic experience. Were you on boats as a kid?
yeah. So as a kid, living down there, we're always offshore fishing.
Yeah.
We're country boys. So I mean, as a kid, we would go across with the offshore boat to Bahamas. We'd bring it back after season and stuff like that. During hurricanes, we'd bring it back, stuff like that. So I had experience of going across. It was nothing for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, as a kid, we offshore fish. It's normal to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, let's just take one of the day cruises over there. They're like $99. So let's just take a day cruise over there. So what did they do is I think they went in like a Friday and leave Sunday. So you get 2 days on the island. So it's like, okay, perfect. Let's just do that. Let's just do a cruise, have fun. Let's not even, do nothing else. So we shoot across. And I think it was going to be like easy. You know what I'm saying? Like to plug in and everything else. No, it's hard. It's actually harder over there than it was here in the United States. And I don't know if you ever been to Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like anywhere else. So you've been to like other parts, tourist spots, throughout the country, right? Yeah. You got people trying to sell you drugs. Here, you want to grab, you want this, they got everything. They're trying to hustle everything, right? So
it's garbage.
And they chase the same price as America because they know what we charge. So they're charging the same thing and they're killing it because they're getting it for nothing and they're stomping on it.
Right.
So they're pushing a lot of product to the tourist people. Like, why do they want to break off? I didn't know none of this. Is that I learned.
Right.
So I started talking to these people like, hey, so my boys are buying stuff from them, trying it out. And they're like, dude, it's garbage. So we start like kind of working our way up a little bit, like starting to meet people. And it was pretty challenging because you got 3 clean cut white boys and they're thinking DEA, cops, like whatever. So once we started like hanging out on the island, like that weekend, we didn't get nowhere, absolutely nowhere. So we're like, let's just take the offshore boat over there and let's just go hang out and start making our presence. So that's what we started to do. We started making our presence, started meeting people, and it still led nowhere. Like I would literally be able to buy like a quarter key, half key, stuff like that. And I just bring it back on test runs. We brought some other stuff back. So I wanted to get in with this one Bahamian. So I brought back 90 pounds of weed for somebody. And
on your boat?
On my boat. So I brought it back and he hooked me up with some coke. So I was like, listen, you hook me up on the coke, I'll bring your shit back. Because what's the difference between coke and weed? Like you're already bringing something back. Might as well throw it on the boat. Let's run it. I want to impress them.
Oh, how are these test runs? What's the secret here?
There's not. I just was wanting to just bring it across.
But it's just luck. You're just keeping them.
Luck.
Where are you hiding 90 bricks of?
I got it in a dive bag. And what we did was I figured out how to. So one of the guys, lifelong friend, older guy that was a drug smuggler, I'd asked him about some of his advice on it, about drug smuggling from Bahamas and how they used to do it and what his thought was on it. And he was one of the ones who's like, I don't know anymore. But he says, listen, if you're going to do it on a small level, he says, make sure that it's somewhere where you can grab it fast. Don't put it in nothing if you're going to do a small level test runs. Because he's like, listen, don't put enough weight in it. He says, because you don't want it to sink straight to the bottom if you have to throw it over. He says, you don't want to hide it somewhere where they pull you over and you can't get to it fast enough to sling it off the boat. That's why you see all the drug smuggling things. They got it right there and you just see them slinging it out.
Right.
But it floats. Yeah. So he's like, you want to put enough weight into whatever you're doing to where as it's sinking, the current's taking it away. So it doesn't float up and doesn't go straight down.
Because you were saying they will dive to the bottom. And the Bahama waters are shallow. So they'll
never intercept you in the middle of the ocean.
Why?
Because They want you in international They don't want you in international waters. It causes more problems with paperwork and law and everything else. They don't want to really catch you in Bahamas. They know where you're going. Where are you going? The United States. So they just watch the radar and intercept you about 2 miles off the coast. And we're going to get into how they used to intercept me.
Right. Okay.
So they want to catch you within a couple miles off our coast. Right. So when you get a couple miles off our coast, how deep's the water? 60 foot, 80 foot, 100 foot, depending where you're at.
Yeah, it's not like the Pacific.
No, it's not.
So they'll swim down and get it. So instead of just putting it in something that's so heavy, if you have to ditch the drugs, if you're in like a chase, you want something where the current's going to take it and sink it.
Yes. So time it hits the bottom might be a mile away.
Yeah.
Who knows? So he's like, you don't want to just put it there because they're going to pin mark that and they're going to come back with divers to find it. That's what they do. So I learned that. So all we did was literally put it right in the cubby hole of my contender. Well, we wouldn't run in the contender then. It was a different boat. It was a 26-foot Mako. And so I had it just sitting on the front with weights in it, and we just did it that way. And we literally come in and to Jupiter. I didn't come in my hometown because we have an inlet right there by my hometown that splits Vero and St. Lucie. So Indian River County and St. Lucie, it's right across St. Lucie line. But they have a Coast Guard station there because it was a main drug smuggling thing back in the day. So there's a Coast Guard station there, and there's one down in West Palm. But Jupiter's wide open. It's like the middle point. And it's just like a low-key like inlet that come in.
And you're a fisherman. You guys are fishers out there just trying to fit in with the other boats.
Yep.
Right?
Well, no, we are real fishermen. Like, so our boat is set in, like one of the things that you get on my boat, like you're going to wear Guy Harvey, Salt Life. You're going to be wearing, like Colombian, like the fishing shirts and stuff. You're going to be in board shorts, flip flops on the boat or deck shoes, like, Costa sunglasses. Like you're going to fit, like you're not getting on my boat dressed like this or dressed anything else. Like you're going to be fished, we got all the fishing poles, equipment. I mean, the boat's set up. We're literally fishing. When we're over there in our downtime, we're out there fishing. Yeah. So, I mean, we fit the thing. Everything's good. We never get messed with. So we're making these small runs and like we keep coming back and never get pulled over. Never have no issues. And a lot of people don't understand. I don't know if you know how easy it is to get through customs.
Coming into America?
Yeah.
On the water?
90% of the time, Bahamas, I never checked in.
That's right. You never even went through customs going to the Bahamas.
So why would I check in when I came back?
Of course.
You have 24 hours or 48 hours once you get back to go. So I could literally pull in, load my boat up, go home, go to bed, wait until the next day to go to the customs place to check in at the airport.
And would you check in?
90% of the time I didn't.
Because they didn't even know you left.
They didn't know I left.
They don't need to know back.
Because the thing is, if I didn't check in over there and I'm coming back, all I had to say was like, hey, I needed to go get some fuel. I've been fishing.
Right.
They're not watching everybody all the time.
No, they can't.
They can't.
So tell us this. How long does it take to get, where would you load up? What island in the Bahamas? Was this Freeport?
Only Freeport.
Okay. How long does it take to get on boat from Freeport to Jupiter, Florida?
Calm seas, running pretty good, an hour and a half. Wow. Very rarely you would have calm seas and be able to do it. Average 2 hours. I mean, 2.5 hours. Just say average, give or take 2.5 hours. But I mean, we literally like find floating debris out there, like a crate or something big, and we'd fish it. We'd hit some weed lines and fish it. So, I mean, we wouldn't just come straight, run right back, hauling ass. Like we would literally take all day to come home most of the time. Like we would find stuff, throw the rods out, circle around it, catch fish, hit the weed line, do the next thing, come on in. So it looked like that's what most people do. Right. So I grew up doing that. So I'm like, why am I going to change? Right. Like that's what looks normal on the radar. Yeah. Like they don't like just certain things. Yeah. So don't get me wrong. Some days we come straight in. We try them. We tried everything to see what we did. Never got messed with.
So then
we finally, one day we were over there and I don't drink either. So my buddies were drinking, we were clowning, having a good time. And there's this one black dude, swole. Dude, I'm talking about jacked. And he was like in this like a Buick on rims. It was like hideous for the United States, but over there it was like, like a nice car. And he was like clean cut, but he wasn't flashy. Something about him. And he kept rolling the block all the time in La Calle. So La Calle is like a tourist spot, really nice, high end. So it'd be like Cancun's nice part of the island. So that's La Calle's Freeport, which is the nice tourist spot. And he would always cruise the block. So my boys one time, like my one boy just like, when he stopped, just like jumps in the passenger seat of his car. And the dude's like, what are you doing? My buddy's pretty wild. So he's like, oh, you're my taxi cab driver. He's like, get your white ass out of my car. I remember saying something like that. He's like, nah, I ain't getting out. So me and my other boy just jump in the back seat. And he's like, all right. He's like, y'all boys gonna make me drive around. You're gonna go to my restaurant and eat and buy some food. So we go to his place called Triple J's or something. I can't remember what it was. We go there and we eat. And we get to hanging out with him and talking to him a little bit and everything else. So we get to know him. We go out that night. It took, some time to get to know him real good. But we get to know him. He's not in the drug game. He was in the underground casinos. So he would, so there's casinos on the island, but the Bahamians are not allowed to gamble in them.
Explain that. The tourists can gamble, but
Yes.
the Bahamians, the locals can't.
cannot. Locals can't gamble. But they allow casinos to be there for all the tourism.
No.
They don't want to get their people addicted to gambling and let the money go off the island because who knows who owns them. And they know gambling's bad is what he told me.
Wow. So like when you walk into a casino, if you're black, most people in the Bahamas are black.
Yep.
You probably have to show your ID to prove you're American and not local.
Yep.
That's crazy. So now there's this whole underground market racket for gambling.
Yep.
Okay.
So what he did was his family's somebody big on the island. So his gig was he had restaurants and all these buildings and he had hidden rooms in the back, little hiding spots. And he had a connect out of Canada to get like all your like slot machines, your tables, like whatever it took for gambling. I've only been in one of them and I was just like, I'm not again. My boys would get drunk and go in there and gamble.
Who was back there? Mad Asians? No, I guess Asians can gamble though, because they're not Bahamians.
Yeah, they're all
so
Bahamians.
It's all locals that are going to be back there.
It's small. The room is probably size of your room here.
Oh, okay.
Not very big.
Interesting.
Some smaller. So the one I went in probably had like 5 or 6 slot machines, like a craps table and like a little roulette table. Small stuff. Very small, like very back, like something you see like in a movie, like a mob movie type thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It was pretty interesting. I'm just like,
That's
okay, that's pretty cool.
Right.
Like a master room size, normal master room in a house. So I was like, so it's like a light bulb going off my head. I'm like, oh, so you got the port. By then, we'd already had plugged in. I kind of jumped forward a little bit. Time we had started meeting him and talking to him, we'd already met one guy. And he was hooking us up with bricks, which were pretty good. They were 13.5. Before my guy left, when I first started hooking up with my Mexican dude, it was 18.5. Back then
in Florida,
which was really, really good.
Really good.
And then it instantly, like, I don't know, 3, 4 or 5 months later, it went to like 21, 22. Yeah. And it kind of like hovered there for a little bit. But once he got taken out and everything else, like it literally went to 28.5 to 32,000.
In the course of a year that you were selling dope.
Yeah, within a couple years, it went to like 30. Because you got to remember, there was a span that I was doing the Cubans and doing all this, and I was trying to piece. I was piecing them together. Like I went back to a small level.
You had no
for
plug.
A while. I had no plug, so I was just bouncing around, getting small stuff everywhere. And
so in the Bahamas at this time, 2007, 2008, what year is this?
2006, 7.
Okay, tell us about how they were getting it from South America and the way it would like hop islands.
Yes. So this guy that I dealt with, I literally could only get a couple bricks at a time. And I was like, I want more. And he kept telling me, yeah. He was always, saying yes. So what I found out was so the guy that had the underground casinos explained it all to me. He says, Jason, they only get like 300 or 400 keys at a time. It sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot. I mean, because the reason why I say it's not a lot, because somebody else was like, man, that's a lot of coke. And I'm like, no, it's not, because they get it up through, I want to say it all comes through Puerto Rico and Dominican, because it's easy to get it in their ports out of Colombia, and it comes through somewhere else. And then they put it on these little banana boats. They're like long, skinny ones, little thing. And they got a little rudder or thing on it, like 150 horse or whatever. And they jump islands with it. So they might start off with who knows how many bricks on it. And they go from island to island to island. And then so like one boat
dropping 100 keys here, 50 keys here. Yeah.
I don't know. If I told you, I'd be lying. I'm assuming they're dropping so much off.
Right. And there's a lot of islands.
A lot of islands, but there's not a lot of big islands.
Right.
Nassau and Freeport are your biggest ones.
So you can't hide on the small islands?
Well, the problem of it is the small islands is that, there's not a lot of market, a lot of, they're too small. I imagine the feds can just show up and raid them easy. You know what I'm saying?
Absorb all that coke.
Yeah.
But there's probably 50 guys like you. So
there's 50 guys like me waiting at Freeport for drugs. That's what I'm getting to. That's why I said 200, 300 kilos is not a lot.
Right.
So my main issue is that every time I go over there, like we would be guaranteed 5 and we show up and we get 2. And we're paying 13.5 over there for them when they're selling over here for 32,000. So I'm not complaining too bad, but I want to get back on. I got people chomping at the bit, wanting a lot.
So if you got over 2 kilos and you're like, I don't know when more is coming in, I assume you were just breaking it down into small pieces, right? You can't give them away wholesale.
I wouldn't sell them wholesale, or I would sell only ounces,
Yeah.
quarters, halves, stuff. No more than, if you wanted like 4 or 5 ounces, I'd sell it to you. Nothing bigger than that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know when my next load was coming in. So I was going through, we were doing it all through emails. So like a lot of times my dude would email, we'd have the same email set up. People say all the time, I did a TikTok on this. They're like, that doesn't work, this and that. And let me explain
10 kilos,
something.
very, very truly yours.
So we both had the same email and we both had the same password. So the trick is through the cartel, and we found out through the terrorists and all that stuff. They do it through PlayStation Live, and they do it through emails. And people are like, you can't do that. Well, listen, without a snitch, they don't know that this email exists, you dummy. Because whatever. So the whole trick of it is that you go into the draft. I log in. And I'll write like, hey, is the fishing good? And then he would go in and keep checking, and he would delete it, and he would answer. You don't hit send, you hit save and draft. And then he'd be like, hey, listen, they're saying that, next week the weather's going to be good. Everything's going to be on point. So blah, blah, I'll let you know. And I keep checking, 2 or 3 times a day. And then I'll be like, thank you. And then I'll delete his thing, and I don't hit send. I just hit save. And then he's like, hey, listen, the fishing's on, come soon. So then I'd be like, okay, I need to leave. So that's how we would do it. And so we would communicate that way. And then when I get on the island, he would know when I pull in. Like it got to the point where it was like, I had problems with this one custom guy. That's why I quit checking in. Mm-hmm. And I had told my guy about it, and he's like, don't worry about it. I got him. That's Goose or something, Big Goose or whatever. Big old dude.
So these guys on the island already had the dudes working at the port.
Yes, they had everybody.
Okay.
They had everybody.
And so did the guy who had the gambling. Obviously,
he had the guys. The other guys, I don't think they had at the port because they were coming in all on small boats. So the drugs would come up through the Cuba, Puerto Rico on that small boat. Mm-hmm. And that was the issue is like, so my guy would be like, hey, listen, you need to show up. Like it's coming. Then I get there and we'd be waiting for a week. And I'm like, dude, where's it at? Bad weather, Coast Guard. They would have to hide out. They couldn't get. So it would get pushed back a couple weeks or not. I watched the boat pull up one time. They're like, the boat's here, and they had no drugs on it. They already sold it time they got there, all the drugs. So I was literally going back home empty-handed so many times, and then like, hey, I'm going to get 5 and I get 1.
Brutal. You can't build a business like that.
Can't build a business. No. So I would literally like sit at the thing. We're waiting for a week or 2. And I'm like, all these same people are sitting here waiting too, like on the island. I'm seeing the same people every time I come and everything else. And I'm like, so my boy's like, yeah, what do you think they're waiting on? Same thing as you dummy. Mm-hmm. And there was these group of white boys out of West Palm. And when I tell you white boys, we're talking like hood white boys, like, and I'm like, how in the hell are they coming across this ocean? Like if I wouldn't dare be seen around them, because if you come across that ocean, them Coast Guard boys know who fits that ocean and who doesn't.
Right.
Like if there's a black dude on a boat coming across that ocean knowing they don't like water, you getting messed with. Like your boat's getting raided. Like hard.
White boys and do-rags don't seem like they're deep water fishing.
These boys were everything, gold teeth, the whole nine. And I'm like, oh my God. And the reason why I found out about these boys, we were at a nightclub one night on the island, and they were like blowing money. They got like rags, chains, gold, like hood as can be. And my boy told me like they got the plug. They're the ones getting all the weight. Like they were running a huge operation. They didn't last very long.
Couldn't have, right?
Well, they caused so much controversy on the island of, spending so much money, balling, and like making such a president that it got the local DEA, the United States DEA on them.
Okay, so then how did so all these problems, but then you meet, what's the guy's name with the gambling?
I'm not gonna say his name, but my main guy with the gambling thing.
Yeah.
He, I meet him and I explain my, my issues and stuff. And I asked him how he was getting in. He said he had the guys in the port on payroll. So by this time, the reason why I'm asking is because somebody informed me that somebody I went to high school with, a couple of them, they were Colombian. I didn't know I went to school with a Colombian cartel family. So back in the 80s, what was everybody trying to do back then? All the cartel leaders trying to kill and kidnap everybody's family members and stuff. So what a lot of people didn't realize, they were sending their families over here for protection. Yep. So the wife and the kids came over here and they were hiding out in our hometown.
Wow. And their
nobody knew
children
that.
went to school with you.
Yes. So one of my buddies knew that I was what I was up to and was like, hey, I got somebody for you. So we made a trip to Colombia.
Okay. You went to Cali.
Yeah. We went to Cali. I call it Cali. It's Cali. You call it Cali.
Yeah.
They always call it Cali.
I pronounce it right.
Yeah.
Is all that is.
No, I'm saying you pronounce it the way it is, but they always said Cali because Cali Cartel, and that's how they did it. So when people want to know why I call it different. So
can you explain to us real quick? Because this is the Cali Cartel was founded by the Orejuela twins, the brothers. But by the 2000s, when you went down there, they had long been in prison. Did you know how that operated?
No.
You never got a sense of how the families and anything like that.
Nothing.
Okay.
Didn't know anything. It all happened so fast. And I was just like, let's go.
Right.
Like, I am so over this whole drug thing. Like this whole drug thing is like, people think like drug business is easy. It's not easy. It's a headache. It's stressful.
Yeah.
But it's the addiction of being able to pull it off. I love it. It's just like the rush of being able to, like, a white boy that looks like me, like be able to pull it off, do the things everybody says you can't do. Like, it's a rush, like a high. It was like my addiction.
Yep.
So I'm like, I'm in. I don't know who I'm going to meet. I don't even know the whole story. I don't know nothing.
And
like,
you went down before all these white people started going to Colombia.
Yes.
And it was normal for tourists back then, dude. Like, they were still recovering from it being the most dangerous country in the world, just like 10 years before.
So my boy was like, hey, we're at the airport, we land. He's like, when we walk out of here, he's like, just don't get nervous. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, just it's not, he's like, yeah. And I'm trying to explain, like, he was just breathless. He's like, he's like, you'll see, just act normal. We walk out of the airport and everybody's families, like there's hundreds of people waiting. It's like where all the cars, taxi cab, everybody's waiting with their families behind this little like barricade, like little thing or whatever, fence thing. And they're all like short, tiny little people. And they're all like, the whole place gets quiet and they're just like 3 gringos get off, dude. And we're all over 6 foot and they're all just watching us. And he's like, you see what I'm talking about? And I'm like, dude, why are they all watching? And he's like, dude, they don't ever see white boys like, Americans. Like, it's very rare. I'd say out of all the times I went down there, I think I've only seen 2 other white people.
Yeah.
Swear to you.
That's crazy.
Because Cali's like on the southwest corner of
There's
Colombia.
a lot less, even now, Cali's, there's a lot less tourists. There's a lot less white people. Yeah, you look like a Fed.
Yes.
You look like a Fed everywhere, but you really stand out down there.
So 2 like little Zuzu pickup trucks pull up, Nissan Zuzus, I don't know. They switched them up. And then like these guys, the doors open, these guys get out with the guns and they're like, oh, that's our ride. And I'm like, what? Thinking like, what in the hell? Like, I'm not expecting none of this. So we hop in the vehicle and my boys turn around because they were already over there. So they're like, hey, how was the flight? Blah, blah, blah. And we're like, everything's good, da, 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 da. So one was in one and one was in the other one. And I mean, we're literally like passing everybody. I remember like pulling up to like red light stuff. And if we could pop up on the sidewalk and go around and go through the red light, I'm thinking like, what in the world? Like, why are we doing this? Like, he's like, dude, we can't stop at stuff like that. I mean, he's like, we have to. He's like, but kidnapping is the main source of thing. And red lights are the best place where they get them. They'll come in with all the little scooters and, have the guns put on you. He's like, these vehicles are bulletproof too. And I'm like, what? So it's starting to think in my mind, like, dude, these are real. Like, these boys are real. Like, who are they?
Cats.
And I still don't know that they're a part of the cartel. So we ended up going, they put us in a hotel that they have something to do with to monitor us. And they're like, you don't leave without us. Like, you stay here. Like, you don't do nothing. We'll be back to pick you up. So they come back, pick us up. We go out and we do some stuff. We go to dinner and everything else. And I mean, these guards are with us, guns loaded. Like, everywhere we go, they're sitting with us and everything else. So start to realize, that who they are. By that first night, or was it the second night, I finally get to meet the cousin. The cousin is the plug. Right. And he just got released from El Salvador, Ecuador, or somewhere. He got kidnapped and was held ransom. They had to go down there to set up a drug deal or to get paid on a drug deal. I can't remember what it was. And his family had to spend, I think, $6 million to get him out. He just flew into the country and he's like meeting us 3 hours later. Not like, oh my God, I'm happy to see my family. And I'm just like, so I finally asked him one day, I was like, dude, like the first day, like, and he's like, oh, it's just business, man. It's just how it works down here. And I'm thinking like, business? Like, you were just kidnapped for months and your family gave the $6 million there and got it all out and everything else. And the first thing you come back, set up, and he's like, yeah, I got to get back to business. I lost a lot of money.
Yeah. Back to work. How old was this guy?
He was much older than me. So I was young 20s. I'd say He was no more than 30 years old. I couldn't ask them no questions.
Yeah.
And I'm going to jump to the reason why. I remember being down there partying on a rooftop of a nightclub, and there was a bunch of Colombians and their boys and stuff. And by now, I kind of figured out who was who. I didn't know exactly. And there was this one Colombian kid. He seemed like he came from more wealth than the rest of them, but he gave me the vibe and understanding he had nothing to do with the drug trade. So I asked him, and I'm like, hey, so what does your family do? And he like looked at me and he said something in Spanish to his boy. And my boy's like, man, come on, you got to go. Like you just f***ed up. And I'm thinking like, what did I f*** up? He's like, you got to leave. So they took me and told the guys, drive me straight to the airport. And I got on a plane and came back to America. And he's like, dude, you get killed for asking questions. Like, you can't do that. Like, that's uncalled for. Like, you're going to have to ask for forgiveness. So, like, for me to go back down there, I had to like tell them I apologize and whatever. And then like they cleared me to come back. And the whole time I'm nervous. I'm thinking like, what are they going to get me down here and kill me anyways? Like,
you almost blew the plug just by asking questions.
Like it caused a lot of problems.
That's wild.
But I'll get to that point. So like, that's the whole thing about like, when you get into that level, you don't ask nothing. Like you just mind your damn business. Like they know everything about you, but you ain't gonna know nothing about them.
Yeah, that's fair.
So at this point, the cousin's he's pretty cool. Like he's a wild little bastard. Like, he's interesting. And he's like, okay, so what's the deal? And I'm like, well, what is it gonna cost in that? And he's like, anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000, depending what my prices are. I can get it on any ship out of here. It's up to you to get it at wherever.
Okay, so he would get it on the ship to leave Colombia. Would he promise to get it to the Bahamas?
He said, I can get it to any port you want. It's up to you to get it off.
Any port.
Any port. Any port. He says, anywhere I can get it on any ship you want out of this country. Anyway, it's up to you to get it off.
And what is your first thought?
I said, I got that.
That's right. Because now you got the Bahamas.
I said, I got to connect to Bahamas. And he says, he goes, you do? I said, yeah. He says, are you sure? He says, because you're paying for everything up front, all cost. Because he's like, because I had to pay for the coke, then I had to pay for the shipping, I had to pay for everything. So he's like, listen, he's like, here's the deal. He's like, I'm not going to lose nothing. He's like, if you say you have a port, that's up to you. Nothing's going to come back to me, so I don't care. He says, so if you say you got it, he says, let's get it. I said, well, I want to do it on a small level first because I don't know who these other people are. I don't know if they're just saying that and they're going to set me up. I don't know.
Who are these other people? Who are these other people?
Bahamians.
Right.
I don't know if they really do. Or are they going to set me up? Or
they're a lot sketchier in the Bahamas. They're way poorer. They're way more violent.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And the Haitians are a lot there too, taking over.
Oh, they have Haitians in the Bahamas?
Yes.
Oh, and
so they're feuding, they're fighting. Because I don't know if you know, like you've seen, like it's getting to the point where like they're putting like warnings on like traveling to Bahamas, like Nassau and stuff, in the tourist areas, how bad it's getting.
Currently?
Yes.
Wow.
So like, there's been a lot of issues down there. And so Americans are allowed to carry guns there, but the Bahamians are not allowed to have guns. But we can take guns over there for our own protection because piracy is so bad. They'll come rob you out in the ocean. Like, so if you're out in the ocean and a boat comes to you, like you don't like go to them. Like you stay the hell away from them.
Right. And so, you were saying too that you would have guns sent from America placed in different spots that you would be at, so you had access to them.
Yes. So instead of me carrying guns over there and having to let them know or get caught with them things, so I had a connect in Florida. I didn't. One of my boys had a connect, and I got 10 unmarked guns straight from the manufacturer. Registered to nobody, got out the door to us.
How do you do that?
Okay, so there's a lot of small manufacturing gun companies. So all you got to do is know somebody that works there or has somebody that works there, and they're selling guns out the back door type. They're making guns and selling them, just like anything. Because I don't know if you ever know any business, people are making their own stuff on after hours or parts and building their own stuff, whatever it is. I mean, it's like plumbers, electricians are doing side work.
Right.
Same.
I gotcha.
So I got an order in on 10 guns. So I got the 10. They're the Taurus. The Taurus, they're like a shiny, like I couldn't pick it. They're like a shiny 9mm Taurus.
Got it.
Like
so 9mm small arms.
Yes,
you're only dealing with small arms.
I wanted something small. I didn't want nothing big. And so I got 10 of them. And so I had them, like I take a couple over there and I put them on the island, keep them in certain places. And so I had guns there, and then I had guns that would stay on the boat locked.
Right.
And it came to a point because you didn't want to get caught on the island with a gun without registering through customs, because now you're going against their gun laws.
Right.
So it's kind of risky, but at the same time, I'm already doing bad. anyway.
Right.
So what does it
Okay.
matter?
So the point is you don't know how solid your connects are at the Bahamian port just yet.
I don't trust nobody.
Fair enough. And we're going to see why in a minute. How much cash do you have in your bank, your re-up bank now that you've got the Colombian plug? How much are you willing to risk? Because you got to pay him up front.
I mean, you got to remember, I mean, I had hundreds of thousands. I was a millionaire by 21. I guarantee I had $1 million by 21. I had money. I had cash all over the place. It's wasn't that I was willing to risk a lot of that. I just didn't want to. I'm very cheap. So back then, I didn't want to waste none. I mean, I was willing to spend $50,000 to $100,000 to risk.
Okay, so that's good though. It still gets you 20 bricks.
So I only did 10 bricks the very first time. And the reason why, because I had to give a percentage to the Bahamians and everything else time I did it. And I wanted to do on a small level. My guy told me, doesn't matter. I get where you come from. I wouldn't do nothing really too big. He's like, it doesn't matter. We're going to put it in something. You're going to get it. It's just like shipping anything from a country.
Right.
It'd be in a huge thing, but your box would be this big type thing.
Right.
So
how did they get you the first? Did you know how it came in the ship?
I don't know how, none of that. I didn't ask. They didn't tell me. They wouldn't tell me because they have their ways of doing stuff. And you think they're going to give it to some little guy like me? No.
Fair enough.
So I'm just like, okay, however you do it, I don't care. I'm sketched out. Like, this is like, out of all the I've ever done, this is where it gets the most sketchy for me.
Okay. Sorry, this is so fascinating. How do you get them $4,000 times 10? How do you get your Colombian plug? How do you get him 40 G's in cash?
The family in Vero.
Okay. Yeah. So you just keep the money in the States.
Keep the money right in the States. Easy. So on a small level, they're just like, just take it over there. And we'll just, because the family, has money and needs money or whatever. They were just like, just give it there. So some of the family members there and I gave the money to them. I never really had to take money down there at the beginning. Like, it was pretty wild. So it was really simple to me. Like, the family's already here.
Yeah.
I just give them the money. Somebody takes it. The very first time, let me tell you how sketchy it was. They wanted me to like drop the money off somewhere in town. Like, you just drop it. And I'm thinking like, dude, I'm going to put eyes on this thing. So I didn't put eyes on it. I dropped it just to see, and it went smooth. They're like, yeah, we got it. Everything's good. So I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. And so the drugs come in, we're waiting, and they come to the port. My guy was like, okay, whatever. And here I am thinking like, these boys are just going to screw me the very first time, like whatever. So my dude comes through and like, we're sitting somewhere. The dude shows up to the restaurant we're at.
You're the gambling dude.
We're at the gambling dude. We're in the back room. The drugs show up. He gets his, I get mine.
Okay. How much are you giving him off 10?
Quarter, giving a quarter of the shipment.
Okay. So you give him like 3.
I give him a quarter of the shipment. That's the agreement. A quarter of the shipment come in. So that's
that
to
makes
pay everybody. That's to pay everybody.
So you're paying people in cocaine.
I'm paying them in cocaine, not cash. They want the drugs. They make more money.
Right. Exactly.
Smarter.
That's how most of this, like, you call it like middlemanning in the Caribbean. I've learned just reading. That's how most people get paid, is in blow.
Yeah.
All the way up from Nicaragua, Panama, Nicaragua, through the islands. Yeah.
Because they make more money.
Of course.
That's so
just
true.
Pay me in a bird.
Just pay me in a bird, because then they can turn around and small it out in the streets or whatever they want to do it. Who cares? I didn't even know my business. So they want the coke. So I just give them a quarter of the coke.
Okay. So now your price is up 4,000. So that's raises your price on a brick a little bit.
Yeah. I averaged around $8,000 a brick. Yeah. I think time everything came out. The reason why I say this, because as I got more bricks, the price came down a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I want to say at the beginning it was like around 8, but I mean, where else are you going to go buy Colombian cocaine for $8,000?
$8,000, you can't.
You're going to have it tied in.
Yep.
So then I didn't have to pay nobody to bring it in the country because I'm doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally was just like, holy. So I had these dive tanks made. So I had dive tanks that went bottom. And I don't know if you know, on the bottom of a dive tank, they got a plastic little sleeve so it doesn't scuff up the bottom of your boat. And it has like almost a wrench, like a socket, like, grooves in it so it sits in a box. It won't turn, rotate. So they pop off. And we had a machine shop. I have a buddy that has a machine shop, and I didn't tell him what was going on. And he's pretty close to me. So we had it machine cut, precised. And on the inside, they're not totally like circle. They're like a different design. And I think they did it so you can't do this. So we had to take a machine and lay it out right, and then lay it to where it'll slide back together. We had to like sleeve welded so it sleeves back together.
Okay. And
then we had it a cylinder put in and welded at the bottom where it went up to where they could still we could put air in it. So if you popped it, some air. So we leave about that much of the dive tank where you could put air in it.
Okay.
And then we had these like little pins, like little Allen key, tiny little cover pins to keep it from sliding apart. Because it was a pretty good press. So we'd put the drugs in there. I'd screw it in. I'd take that little Bondo putty filler and put a little bit in there, and we'd touch the paint up, and I'd slide the plastic back on.
Killer.
So then, like, I'd have like 10 dive tanks on the back of the boats.
Yeah.
And then you could just pop the valve.
How many keys could you get into one tank?
You get 3.
Okay.
Break it down. You'd have to break them. So we'd put 2 in there, slide them side by side, but you could put 3 if you wanted to break them.
What, did you have to manipulate the keys at all? Like, how did they look when they got to the Bahamas? Were they those textbook squares, or were they more rounded at the side?
So it all varies. I've never got, all the keys are different. Anybody that's ever dealt with bricks, so some of them have like rounded sides, some like, like I've had them where they look like a loaf of bread type.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Then I've had them come in the bricks, like the actual bricks, like you see a lot of times. I had them come in a loaf of bread. It's crazy because you would think that these cartel people would get it from same thing. No, they're getting it from the jungle or wherever, and they're just buying a bunch of it. Like what we did with the marijuana in California. Mm. So the thing is I would get them all different types of ways. But the stamps were pretty consistent with them. But like the loaf of bread ones, I want to say I got some of them before that looked like a loaf of bread, and they didn't have stamps or nothing really in them. And I was real eerie about them, but they were the same. So it really didn't matter.
And you could still fit them into the tanks.
Still fit them in the tanks.
So now you've got 10 tanks, but only a few of them have cocaine in them.
Yeah, not all of them had coke. So some of them were, regular tanks, and some wasn't.
And if you got boarded by the Coast Guard and they got curious and they twisted the top of one of them, they
all had valves, pressure valves, so they could see low on air, but they'd hit it and it'd still let air out.
Yeah,
let the air out.
This is pretty good. This is a pretty good trick.
So they're sealed up tight. I mean, I take a little bit of silicone, put around them. We, pop them together on the inside so keep the smell down and everything else. So we never had an issue. So we were only doing that on the small level. So once we worked out a few of the bugs and started working our way up to get 100 bricks to come in.
Don't you dare skip over this, though. So is this before or after you've started to put American law enforcement on your payroll?
So all this time leading up to this, over the years, I started building that. So I already had a lot of the sheriff's department on payroll. I went and literally weekly paying them. So they would give information to really close people to me to give to me, and I would give them money to pay them. Some would want a couple $1,000s for, some would want, I never tell anybody. I don't, of course they're not talking to each other. Some are more expensive than others. So
how did you initially make those relationships?
Small town. Just everybody knows me, and a lot of these boys like me, even though they're cops, they still liked me, and they still were like, Jason's a good dude type thing. Like we really like when we grew up. So they would just leak me stuff all the time. Right. It was never like I approached them. Almost every one of my sources came to me. Mm-hmm. Like they would literally send somebody telling me hey man, such and such cooperated and your name came up. And then I would make sure they get paid. And once they got paid, they were like, oh, so they're like, well,
there's more where this comes from.
Yeah, there's more. So, you know what I'm saying? So I get something like that, I'd send them $1,000 cash. You know what I'm saying? Depending on what it was, it would be a little bit more. So I don't know if they were talking, then it started growing. So then I had more. So then there was a couple boys I know that went into the Coast Guard. So then I had them. So I would ask them some stuff, and then they kind of knew what was going on. So they would tell my boys hey, listen, we're going to be patrolling in this area because there's a lot of activity going on. So we'll be there for a couple of weeks. I'll let you know when we're not. So then I knew where the Coast Guard was patrolling. So they're shipments would come in and I can't go. And they're like, you need to come now. So that was another reason why I would lose shipments before I started going to Colombia, because the shipment would come in, but then my source, I can't tell them that it's hot. Yeah. I don't want to leak that.
Right. So
I'm I can't, I'm busy right now. I just can't, things are not right. So, and I'd get over and be like, hey, my dude told me it's hot. I didn't want to put it on the thing. So
now that you've got the Colombian Connect, you start making runs. Did you ever use the law enforcement? Do you recall a time when their information actively helped you evade getting caught?
Yes. So we were going to make a run, and my boy had, I don't know how, or it was just randomly or whatever, and was just hey, let Jason know that we're going to be patrolling in this spot for the next week. And that was when I was supposed to go. Now, what was the odds of it that they were looking for me? I don't know. Who knows? But a lot of their contacts was great. Like they would tell me like, hey, listen, this is what's going on. And then like a lot of my law enforcement connects back at home were great because they would tell me whoever got hit, like nobody knew that this person got arrested.
Right.
Because as well as I know, a lot of times they don't get booked when they say they're going to cooperate. They hold that booking over them.
Yeah. They'll say, hey, well, we won't even take you to jail. You start working for us right now. Nobody will ever know.
So my sources were always on point. And then, so a lot of times, so this is what's so funny, because one of the guys in our hometown owns an AC business that's somewhat successful now. And, he just was a crash dummy. He would just keep getting busted. And it's just like, as well as I know, when you're in the drug game, everybody wants to tell you the gossip. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to talk. Everybody wants to say, so all the gossip. And so this boy right here would apparently, he was pretty big on the weed game, and he didn't get into coke that I know of, but he would get busted all the time, would grow houses and stuff, and he was just ratting, but never whatever. So my sources would be like, hey, he got hit again. He got hit again. And next thing you know, he's trying to get close to me. Like to people, getting close to my people. And I would tell him like, hey, and some of my boys wouldn't listen to me. Next thing you know, they got hit. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. Who are you? They're like, oh, dang, don't act that way. And I'm like, we never hung out. Like pretty much saying like, you're a idiot if you're not listening to me.
Right.
So, like a lot of people get so addicted to it that they can't take the needle out to, back off for a minute. Like
reset.
They don't know how to do it.
I was one of those guys.
Oh, you were?
I didn't. I was like, oh my God, if I don't move this 100-pound load through now, I'll never have it again. It's scarcity mindset. Really? That's what I think it is. I think it's less adrenaline, more like, oh, I'm going to lose my customers. And then that's how I felt about it.
See, I was opposite. I was always that guy that I'd sit back.
Well, you're better at it than me.
So the DEA told me when they busted me, they told me, they're like, dude, even especially when they came to me the day I got off, I got my clemency, when they were waiting on me, he was like, dude, you're so much fun. He's like, everybody else is like a junkie and like gets on drugs and mess up and make it so easy. He's like, you were so good. He's like, dude, it was so entertaining, so fun tracking you. And they've always told me that. They were like, we were never able to get anybody to wear a wire on you. And I was like, well, that's an honor.
You're on point.
He was like, dude, he's like, not saying that we would never got you.
Yeah.
We'd always, it's cat and mouse. Yeah. He says, but he says, you brought the fun back. That's what he told me.
Yeah. So tell us about how it ramps up. Now that you've got this almost fail-safe system to get the drugs from the Bahamas to Florida coming from Colombia, how many runs do you take before you're ramping up to 100 bricks? Okay.
So at this point, you got to remember, we probably made 20 runs between going over and getting small stuff, dry runs, go over there and it never shows up, weather, whatever. So we've made like 20 and we've only been intercepted one time. So we were shooting across and and the Coast Guard, the 90-foot cutter is over there. So it's like a battleship type. It's a 90-foot cutter and it looks like a type of a battleship in a way, but it's only 90 foot. So they call it the 90-foot cutter. And he's like probably like 2-3 miles off the coast of Bahamas. So the only way they can patrol their waters is if they have a Bahamian on their board. And he has to be on that ship ordered to board our ship. So it's rough. It's so goddamn rough. It's better to run in rough seas than calm because you don't show up on the radar because the seas are so rough. They just, it looks like just a big wave. Like you might look like one of the rogue waves or something. So the rougher the seas, the better you're off. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Oh, it's just like smuggling in a car. It's pouring down rain. Cops aren't even out there or they don't want to pull you over.
They want to pull you over.
Yeah.
So the rougher the seas, the better it is. It's rough this day. So like we can't even get over like 14 mile an hour in a boat, bows up and just water just coming. Like it took us like 4.5 hours to get across, 4.5, 5 hours.
Wow. So you guys are loaded up right now?
No. We're coming over. I'm loaded with money.
I see.
I'm going over to pick up.
Got it.
And he intercepts us a couple miles off. I see him off in the distance. I see him on the radar first. I could see a big glob. So I'm like, that's got to be the big boy. So I start like veering off to the left away from him. So heading a little bit east. And all of a sudden I see that coming, dude. And next thing you know, I start seeing it coming faster. And I think, dude, I just see black smoke rolling out and just see whitewash. Like it's a cutter. Mm-hmm. It's got a thin hull so they can just cut the waves and go. Wow. And he's at full throttle. I turned my radio off. So I tried to trim the boat. So I think as fast as I got was like 17. And he was running probably like 28, 30 knots in that rough seas. He catches me pretty quick. And they only pull right up, and they have these huge binoculars inside. So they can see my FL numbers. I mean, they're literally 50 feet away from me, 30 feet. And we're sitting there, like this together. And he's like, can you read my FL number? So I have to lean over the boat, read them off on the thing. We have to like show them our passports like this. So we just hold them up, and they got the big binoculars. So I'm assuming they're looking to see if whatever. They ask us a few questions, what we're up to, what we're doing. Say, hey, we're just coming over fishing. The Weather Channel said the weather was supposed to be better than what it was. And they lied. So I'm like, hey, do y'all know how long the weather's going to be, bad for? Like, what's going on? Like, what's the report showing? And he's like, I'm on the radio. Like, 'cause he's right there talking on the radio. Because they'll say, hey, go to channel whatever, 30. So you switch over and you're like, okay, what's up? And he's like, I don't know. We're heading home. Our shift's over with. Something like, hell yeah, it's over with. Like, my source didn't tell me about this ship here. So we go in. At this point, I'm not going, very rarely I'm going into Lakaya anymore. So I go into Lakaya, we do our deal, we come out, and the cutter is sitting out there. So I shoot into this little place called Buda Bay. It's a little little canal that goes in, and there's like this big Blue Marlin like resort thing, and then it has this little Bahamian, has like 3 or 4 little cots that you can rent, and I know them real good, and they have a house on 2 stories. So I'm asking, I'm like, Trick, man, I'm like, what's up with old boy? And they're like, man, that boat's been sitting out there. And I'm like, I know. And I was like, he told me he's going home. He's like, yeah, he lied to you. And so I'm like, dude, I need to rent a room for a couple of days then. He's like, yeah, I got one. So we're just sitting there waiting, and we're sitting up on this balcony for days, dude, and this boat's just sitting out there.
And the kilos are in the tanks.
Yeah, they're in the tanks, and we're watching on binoculars, dude, and I'm watching. I told my boys, I'm like, dude, we're not taking nothing home. So we hide the drugs on the island.
How many did you have?
I probably had 20 at this point, probably maybe 20.
Yeah.
So 20 bricks is a lot of coke.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, especially like Pierce, and I'm building my clientele back up. So we shoot across and never got intercepted, never nothing. We're like, what? We should have brought it. Like, what the hell? So we waited, and we went back a couple days later and got it. And so we never had no issues. Like, it was just smooth selling. Like, literally, we'd pull right in, load the boat up. I had a boat that I'd hide down there that I used, nobody knew about. So my dudes would be like, man, where you been the last 3 or 4 days? I'm like, dude, I was taking care of stuff. And they're like, no, you haven't, blah, blah. Where you been? Like, everybody wants to be so damn nosy. And I'm like, don't worry about where I was at. So
how do each load keeps getting bigger?
Yeah.
Okay.
They get a little bit bigger.
You go from 10 to 20 to... You
got to remember, so this is, when that happened, that was like my second load coming from Colombia.
Okay.
So before it was only like 2 to 3 to 5 sometimes. You know what I'm saying? They were all small. Now I'm getting into where I'm doing like the Colombian Connect, and this is my first run in. Like, all this time, I've never had a problem with the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
So this is my first run in. So it's kind of got me like, what's going on? So anyways, we start working our way up. We're going to go pick up 100 bricks. I get 100 bricks coming in. It's one of my biggest loads.
When you get it over to Florida, when you get these Colombian loads over to Florida, are your guys, the crew that you have on board, are they also the ones giving it out to the street, or who are your people?
One of them
that you're
is
giving
not.
It to?
One of them's not. The other one is.
Okay.
One of them is. One's not. The one that got the guns, no. Just a lifelong friend, crash dummy. Should never brought him involved. Thought he had his act cleaned up. He's the one that sold the guns, a couple of the guns to the Bahamians over there, and I'm so mad because they're always wanting ammunition. Like, they have a few guns on the island, but they can't get ammunition. Like, ammunition is like what they want, and I'm thinking to him, like, why are you going to sell guns that people were buying from us so they can rob us and kill us? Like, dude, these people are straight killers. And 2 weeks after he sold the guns, the ATF is already at the plant where the guns came from. And my dude's like, well, I thought we had an agreement. And I'm like, we did. Through my dude and stuff like that. And this dumbass sells 2 of the guns, and both of them are committed into murders over there. And it gets back, and then now they want to know why 2 guns ended up in their hands over there and where they come from. So it's causing a problem. Now I'm mad. So now I'm like, dude, you're out. Like, you can't, no more.
How many people are you giving? So when you get it over now, say you get 20 bricks over, that's, you're paying 8,000 a piece, but it's still a lot of work. Are you breaking it down, or are you just giving them out wholesale? I want it
gone.
So
I barely at this point breaking it down anymore.
Okay. So,
I'm just because I got such a good price. I'm making such a profit. I'm just selling them in bricks.
So what are you selling a brick for in Florida? They're
28 to 32,000 and pending, like whatever. So I would sell them around 26 because I want my guys to be able to do things. I don't want to touch small. I hardly anymore. Now I'm on a bigger level. So
you're making, you're tripling your money, over tripling your money.
yeah, we're doing really good.
Yeah.
So like, I'm at the point now, like, why do I want to do small?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do anything less than a key. Like some of my close boys, I'll break it down some, like quarter keys or whatever. But other than that, I'm getting to the point I don't want to touch nothing. Like, I don't want to do none of the small stuff. A lot of my boys, like, we're in the streets. So we do a lot of like street outlaw racing and stuff. Like we literally like racing banshees, racing cars. So I'm in with a lot of like, hood dudes, and a lot of them racing dudes are all in the dope game. All of them are.
Yeah.
So I'm in with those boys. So now I'm in with a lot better. So I don't know if you know the code in the streets of racing is like, them dudes, like if you don't pay on a street race or whatever, like your ass is done. Like it's over with. Nobody's going to race you. Like, so like in the Banshees, like there was a lot of hood, like pulling guns, not wanting to pay. Like we got out of that quick. But in the street racing, the only way you're going to get a gun pulled on you, you ain't paying. So you're in with a lot of dudes that are really solid, like stand up, like they're more business types. Like they don't have $500,000 race car setups because they're small timers.
Right.
Like these boys are traveling from all over the place. So
you got a good network
of
people.
Yes.
So you could off of 20 bricks, you can make almost $500,000.
We're making a good amount of money.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm up in the thing, now we're having to move money around. Okay. So now it's getting to the point. So I had to find out a way to get the money to South America. Okay. So now it's becoming an issue.
You couldn't just give it to
it's too much
cousin
money.
in Florida anymore.
It's too much money. Right. So they wanted it to Costa Rica or Panama. Okay. So what I did was I put it on, found a fishing boat, found a company that would come out of Florida and go fishing down there and come back. A couple companies. So I had got somebody close to me to get a job to get on that boat. So I put the money on that boat, and then I have somebody waiting over there to intercept the money when the boat came in over there.
In Panama,
Costa Rica. That's how we were getting all our money out of the country, is on fishing boats. So I would put somebody on a fishing boat to go down there, and that's how.
And you would meet one of their people, one of the Colombians people would be there
I'm assuming they're laundering their money through those our countries. I'm not sure.
For sure
I just know that they didn't want it back in Colombia. They just wanted it to those islands. I mean, not islands, but to those countries.
Yep.
So we would get it in, and then I would pay, somebody would meet, they would take the money, and then it would go from there.
And obviously that's going to cost you a fee to get that money down.
It does. It does cost me. And now I got to pay this guy to, move the drugs. It's costing, little, it's not a ton of money, but you got to remember, if you don't pay people good, they're going to run their mouth and get mad. When they see you making a ton of money, like you got to make sure. I was good about paying people. That's why I never had nobody wear a wire on me. None of my guys close to me. Nobody turned on me until the very end, until they're looking at 30 years. But by then we were out of the game. Right. The feds already shut us down. So it didn't matter. But I was good about paying people, making sure everybody was taken care of.
But the more your costs go up, the more you're like, well, we need more bricks.
Well, no, not necessarily that. You just need more bricks because, people are asking for more, and it's like, I'm already at this point. But we skipped a big point, though, is because at the very beginning, everybody always told me, like, oh, man, you never been in trouble before you're young. The first time you get in trouble, you might do 5 years. So I was that guy, like, at the very beginning, I never expected to be on this level. Let's just be honest. I wanted to be on a smaller level. It just happens, it just grows and grows and grows. You get addicted to it, lifestyle. And people are like, what do you mean lifestyle? Like invited to all the parties, the money, the fame, the everybody want to hang out with you, the gossip, it's just everything. So it grew. And everybody always told me like, oh, the first time in trouble, you're going to get 5 years. And I'm like, I can do 5 years. I didn't realize now I'm at the point where I can get 20 years. Like feds, I'm going to do 20 years for this amount of drugs. Like minimum mandatory. Like nobody told me this. So I'm still in my mindset, like I got 5 years. I can do that. So by then we scheduled to have 100 bricks come in, and we go over to the Bahamas, and we're staying at this hotel. And I'll never forget, we were walking to the parking lot. In this hotel, we can pull the boat up to it. Yeah. But there's a parking lot over the thing. And so we'd always have like a rental car or scooters or something we'd ride on. So we'd park over there. And I'm walking through the parking lot, and my two buddies in front of me, and this car like pulls up, and these dudes like jump out, and they like grab me and like throw me in the back, and like, jump. One's on top of me, and the other one's like jumped in there, and like they like drug me through. So now they got me. And I'll never forget, I had the one dude like on top of me. My feet are still hanging out the door's not like that. And they like squeal around my boys, and they're just like dumbfounded. Like I couldn't see them. I was in a car, but they were just told me, they just were like, we didn't know what to do. Like, we just look back and you're gone. And all of a sudden, like this car's peeling out of the thing. So we didn't know what the hell to do. And I just remember I had my gun in my back pocket of my pants. And I just remember the one dude one was like on top of me, the other one's right there. And I just grabbed him and I put it in his head and I was like, I'll blow his brains out right now. So they like stopped. We didn't make it about like probably a quarter mile down the road. But we're still kind of like in a populated area.
Right.
So I got him to stop, and then I had the one dude the headlight, and I put the gun up to the guy's head, the driver, and I'm thinking now, looking back, I tell people all the time, like, it was the dumbest thing, because now I still kind of got this guy on top of me. It could have just took it from me or knocked it out of my hand. So the driver like stops, and I still got the one guy, and I put it back on him, and they like get off. The dude like gets off me because now, I'm threatening to blow the thing out. So I get out of the car. And now I got these 3 dudes out of the car, and I'm out of the car myself. And it happened so fast.
And I know when you guys are out of the car, are you backing them down?
I'm still holding the gun on them.
Yeah.
You got to remember the driver jumps out first. The one guy's kind of like on top of me. He gets out and he wants to get the away from the gun.
Yeah.
So I still got the one guy in the headlock. Well, I should have got out with him still in the headlock backing up. I'd never really been in this situation before. So I kind of like, got out of the car really quick. And now I got all 3 of them like looking at me, and they're just looking like they're not like scared look, but they're looking at me. And I'm thinking like, dude, like this could go really bad. Like, why don't they have guns?
Right.
So I don't know if they just don't want to pull them. I can't answer this. I don't know the whole story behind it. So needless to say, they just kind of gave me that look, like shaking their head, like we'll be back type.
Yeah.
So I knew like, okay, it's game on. They get in the car and they like do it nonchalant, like just walk to the car and like look at it with their head shaking, the one driver, and get in the car and they drive away.
Well, they had no idea that you were strapped.
No, they didn't.
And Bahamians, like you can't have guns. So maybe they just thought, oh, we don't need guns for this guy. We're just going to we'll kidnap him, scare him, beat the shit out of him.
So we didn't want to, I walked back down to the hotel and I'm like, dude, let's get the on this boat. We're getting out of here. So we went out and stayed in the ocean, and I had them boys bring the drugs out to me because I was scared to come back in what they were going to do. So we got the drugs on the boat. By then, now we're having bigger shipments. I'm not bringing them into the dive tanks no more.
Okay. How are you getting them in?
What we started to do is I was going to start having it set up where I was going to get a white ice chest, and off the end of Freeport Islands like this, and then the point has like a long like sandbar that goes out. That's probably like 30, 40 foot deep, 60 foot. It goes out another like 30 miles. And we were going to do a GPS drop point and like put a ice chest down there where I was going to have the drugs dropped off to where I'd never come to the island. So I would literally just act like I'm fishing the bank out there, come in, dive, get the drugs, put it in the boat, and come back. So I never intercepted a boat on the surveillance, on the radar, never went to the island, never nothing.
Okay, so you had the keys, you had your sources, the Colombians.
No, I was going to have the Bahamians, my source, Bahamians thing, put the drugs in the thing for me.
And then,
or have a different set of guys go over to the island, do that, and then I come pick it up, and then they go back empty-handed. But I'd never go. I never got to that point yet. This is what we're setting up because we're getting on a bigger level. At this point, there's weed lines. So I don't know if you know what a weed line is. So with different currents, so like all the trash, so the weeds, the grass and ocean currents come together, create weed lines. So you fish them, you patrol down them to catch fish. So they're periodically every so far out in the ocean. And so when you come, you put a tracking device on the drugs. So you throw it off. So you'll have your boys fishing, like somebody else in a boat fishing one of those weed lines. You have a tracking device on the boat so they kind of know where you're coming across, so they can kind of get close lined up. And then you throw off, like we'll agree, like the furthest weed line out, we'll throw it off. So as soon as they throw it off, the beacon gets set. They just keep coming down. They intercept the beacon while I'm coming in empty loaded. Mm-hmm. So I don't stop. As I'm coming up on it, I just throw the dope off. I keep coming. They're trolling down it. They might be a mile away, and they just troll and intercept it, put it on the boat, finish fishing, rest day. I come in empty loaded.
Although the problem with that is when your boys come in, they are loaded. Where are they keeping the keys? Just in this ice chest?
So yeah, they're just keeping it in a hidden spot on the boat. Like not even really a hidden spot. Just throw it in one of the containers because there's no reason for them to really be boarded or searched like that because they only went out 15 miles.
I see.
You see what I'm saying? Like, so when you go out 15 miles, the only thing that the cops are really going to look is really just in your ice chest, like see what kind of fish and what size.
Right.
So you're literally going to have like spots in your haul where you can, like your village pumps and stuff, you could tuck this in everywhere. There's no reason for them to search your boat like that.
Yeah, you weren't by the Bahamas.
No.
And you didn't even meet up with another boat.
No. Like you're just, dude, hundreds of people go out 15 miles every day to fish.
Every day, especially off the coast of Florida. There's boats everywhere.
There's boats everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, once you get past 30 miles, you're sitting duck out there.
Right.
But close in, there's people everywhere. So you don't have to worry about none of that.
Wow.
So, like there's all different ways. That's why I said, like, for this to say that they don't do it, they're doing it. Now that the border's shut down, dude, Bahamas is cranking right now. I guarantee that it's the biggest shipping. It will be 80s all over again.
Yes, talk about that. I'm seeing the news every day now. There's big busts coming out of the Bahamas.
I want to start a nonprofit beach cleaning business is what I want to do.
No.
I'm just playing. I'm being sarcastic.
This is like an AA meeting. I got to talk you off the ledge. I'm your sponsor. You don't want to do that, man.
So the thing is what I'm saying is, no, I get a life sentence next. There's no more in the drip here for me. I'm being sarcastic. What I'm trying to say is that people make it sound like this can't happen no more. And you're hearing my story about how easy it was for me to do it. Okay. Yeah. And the thing about it is that all you got to do is learn from my law enforcement connects that they're not going to intercept you in the middle of the ocean. Okay. They're going to wait till you get closer in to intercept you. And I'm going to get a story how they did it. And all you have to do is set up the systems like I did, linked with everybody, have a system where how you contact each other, have it hidden. You don't even show up. A lot of people don't want to go through these steps. You're cutting in more people. You're costing more money. Yeah. But it's just like the cartels. They have all these different steps to make it happen.
And they'll evolve.
They'll evolve. Yes.
Like, I think people we think about Caribbean, Colombian, Miami drug trafficking like in the 80s where they just loaded 2,000 kilos on an airplane and then went and dropped them in the middle of Florida. And that was really easy and flashy. Yep. And it just doesn't operate like that anymore. But it doesn't mean that you can't get it in. Maybe even at that level, you can
still fly it in. I'm going to tell you what I did.
Oh, wow.
So
you were full of surprises.
So while we were doing this, okay, so I'm thinking like, damn, dude, the weather thing's becoming an issue. All this other stuff. So I would rent planes every once in a while and fly over. And I purchased a plane at this time and I was trying to get my pilot license, but I get motion sickness in the backseat of a car. If I'm not driving the boat, I get seasick. I could not get my pilot license. So what we did was I was going to work on getting it, but I was renting a plane for one of my birthdays. We rented a plane. We flew over for 10 days, I think it was. I had a pilot in the plane and we went island hopping and had a good time. And we came back. And this is how it all started. Because, I said the plane thing is out of reach. Like it cannot happen. We fly back into Fort Lauderdale to customs to one of their airports. And literally, so all the pilot does is get out and he opens up all the hatches to, like the hatches to everything, leaves the door open. We go inside, go through customs, and I'm watching. I can see through the glass, the plane, and the dude goes out there and just writes the FL numbers down off the plane, or the whatever the numbers on it, and looks. He doesn't even go in the plane, doesn't nothing, walks back in. We go back out, get in the plane, and we fly off to our airport, and then we unload everything. Nothing was ever searched. So I did it again. Same thing. So we went to a different airport, customs, and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. So I'm like, what if we had built some cylinders, like diamond shaped, like they do the stealth, you can Google it to find out how they do stealth things. So they're like, do diamond shape, like ping, 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 make it like rounded like thing. I'm like, I could fit 20, stacked, make them about yay big where you can stick a bunch of keys. And as you're coming, you just drop them bitches, like fly. Cause we've had to fly in and do something. We didn't have to fly just to the airport. Yeah. It was crazy. And I asked the pilot, he's like, no, man. He's like, when you come back in, you just have to land. You can't, whatever. So I'm thinking why couldn't we fly into a certain spot, right in evening time and drop these in the same spot with tracking devices on them?
Right.
Close to right at the beach where they wash up or have a boat fishing right there on the beach or something. Right. Something really simple. Right. And have tracking devices where they float and then they don't show up on the radar or something cause I Googled and it's simple to do it, not pop up. And they had to be so big. It looked like a nothing on the radar or like a bird, they said. Right. So I'm thinking damn, we could just do that and just drop them bitches out of the plane. And I'm like, okay, let's look into doing this. So I was thinking about flying it, boating it. So I heard the plane thing doesn't work. It's a lie. It works. People are still doing it to this day.
You fly in bricks?
I never did.
So you never did it?
I never got to that point because when I got kidnapped, we were going to plan on start trying to do some operations that way. We're in the process of having my boy build the cylinders. I was going to build 4 of them where you can fit 15 bricks in each one of them. And instead of going across on a boat and dealing with it, because we can get out of their airport, no problem. Their airport has no security, no nothing. I can get it. I can get in and out of that thing, no problem.
After you get kidnapped, you're there to get 100 bricks to pick up 100 keys. You still got them to the States, or what?
Got them to the States. I got them to the States. So I did the 100 bricks. He got 25, so I got 75.
Yeah.
So I bring them to the States. I distribute it out. So I had a little, lead time because I had plenty of time to get rid of it or whatever, some time. So I was kind of shaken up, and I was like, we got to switch this up. Like, we're not going into the city no more. We're not doing none of that.
So somebody had got the drop. Clearly, your connection in the Bahamas, this guy that runs the gambling, he's talking to people, he's paying off guys at the ports.
Yeah.
Everybody's gossiping that this white boy is now starting to bring in a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So you think you got kidnapped or an attempted kidnap for what? For ransom or for product?
Never found out.
Who knows, right?
Who knows? I'm assuming they were probably wanting to kidnap me to get the product.
Yeah.
The product's worth more than anything.
Of course.
I was told that we were ruffling some feathers on the island because we were cutting them out and we had a connect coming in and they didn't have it. So I'm assuming it came from whoever he was selling the dope to.
Right.
Or somebody at the port. I can't pinpoint exactly who it's coming from. And I got thinking, if it was the port, then why don't they just rob that movement or take my shipment? So I'm assuming what it is now, this guy's dropping off, coming up with kilos of cocaine on the island and giving to people. And then they're like, well, who's he hanging out with? Yeah. And it's like every time these white boys show up, this dude's got weight.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that that's the route that it came from.
Yeah, these aren't pros. This is just some ghetto
ass dudes on the thing. Yeah,
Yep.
Just some ghetto because it doesn't seem like they're very organized. Their car was pretty busted.
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, we got to switch everything up. And then, so the next time, so here's a crazy thing about it. So when we go over there on a short trip, they would always want like the Bahamians over there. So I do trade out for fish and stuff. So they would want like Budweiser in a bottle and like chicken wings and like all that shit because it costs so much money to import stuff over there. It costs a lot of money. So what I would do is I would trade the locals fish. So I would pull in there into there and get like trade them all this stuff, and then I would get a cooler full of fish.
Right.
So it looked like I had conch, lobster, fish, everything. Like I've been on a long fishing trip. So if I went home, like I'd go over there, pick up, and come home. I didn't have much time to fish, or the fishing was suck. I didn't want to go home empty-handed and we get pulled over and then be like, you went to Bahamas, you got no fish.
Right.
So I would literally go over there and hand them a cooler, and they would load it down with everything you can think about, and then I would give them that stuff. So we went into town into that part again to get the trade out. So we have the cooler. You gotta remember now, this is on the second shipment of the big shipment coming in, and I'm trading out. And so I waited a while. This time I didn't check in. I didn't do anything. I'm like, I don't want nobody to know I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if they probably know the drugs are coming in, who cares? But they don't know when I'm coming in. Somehow these know. I don't know how they knew or where it came from. So I show up. We stay at Buda Bay. We come in around to do our thing, drop off the stuff, get our switch out, and literally walking across this parking lot with this cooler, dude. And I look out a corner of my eye and I see this dude just like, how you have that look like he's coming right for you. And I'm just like watching him. He gets closer and closer. And I just watch him do this. And I dropped that thing, dude. I took off running around the vehicle and he's just chasing me. Pop, 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 pop. I'm assuming they thinking the drug's in the cooler.
Yeah, of course.
My boy took off one way. I took off the other way around the damn thing, dude. And he pops. It gets like 4 or 5 rounds, maybe that out. So I don't know if he ran out of bullets or if it jammed. And so I just kept going, dipping in between the cars. Bum, 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 dude, the car's parking lot was gone. Got on that boat, got up out of there. So we ended up getting the dope, getting all our stuff, and getting home. And that's when I was like, I'm over it. I'm done with this. I can't do it
Next time
anymore.
you're going to get killed.
They're going to get me eventually.
Yeah.
So it's like, do I continue to do it? Do I switch it up? How I go about doing it. So I come home and trying to figure this whole game out. You got to remember, I got grow houses going on. We're working on a big deal out of California, moving a bunch of marijuana out of there.
Okay.
So, I have other avenues of stuff going on.
You diversified,
Yeah, but you got to remember, I'm sitting on millions of dollars of money. I don't really care. My lifestyle's pretty cheap. And it's just like, there's got to be a different way of doing this. This is getting to the point where, these guys on this island don't give a like, they just want a fast come up.
Yeah.
They're not going to let me do it.
No.
I feel like I'm not paying off the right person, or I'm not involved with the right person. Like this guy has a lot of pull politically wise, but doesn't have a lot of pull control on the island.
With the gangs. Right.
So it's like getting to the point where he's not protecting me or telling me, pointing me in the right direction. He doesn't know who it is. I'm talking to him and he's acting like he don't know. I mean, it's getting to the point where, is it worth it anymore?
Right.
So I'm back at that level again of just like, this is getting out of control.
And you've got a daughter now.
Yeah, she was 6 or 8 months old at the time, and I remember laying on my chest, and I was just like, I can't do it anymore.
It's changing you.
Yeah, so like, so I fly down to Colombia to talk to my boy, and so we Colombia's pretty wild, so I'll tell you a story. It's pretty wild. So we went down there one time to negotiate a shipment. And I try to stay out of Colombia as much as possible because, you can't get past customs. And I didn't want my passport stamped a lot with it.
Sure.
So I had went down there, and I remember finally getting to go to like third place. So we went to this like condo building. It was 13 stories, 11 stories tall. Had whack and hut security going in at the bottom. It had 11 stories, and each floor was like a 35 or 4,500 square foot apartment. So the elevator opens up to each one of them.
Beautiful.
Every one of them is a family member.
Wow.
FA lived on the top.
Holy.
I'm saying, like the head guy, the one lived on the top, and then the on the top of the roof had like a swimming pool, tennis court, and everything on the roof. And so we were invited up to the last floor that night for dinner, and I'll never forget. They had like little like servants, like girls in there, like little maids and stuff, and like cooking the food and like, bringing some food out on the balcony. And we're like looking over the city because they're like off in the mountainside looking down. And I'll never forget, like, big old mushroom cloud comes up. And I'm like, dude, what is world that? And they're like, oh, it's just somebody getting a message. I'm like, a message? I'm thinking like, what in the world? And he's like, oh, that's just a car bomb. And so I'm like, dude, that's pretty crazy. So we end up going out. Was it this trip or the time before? It might have been the time before. And we were out one night. We're out in the nightclubs, and we got the guards, security with us, and everything else and everything. So whatever we can't do without them. So we go outside. It's probably like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're at like with a little taco stand, like a 3-wheel bicycle. We're out there outside, and everybody's hanging out, dude. And like, everybody's on scooters and cars everywhere. And I just never forget, I heard pop, pop, pop. And I turn around and look behind me. He went like 10 feet behind me. This dude just goes down to the ground. And I watched this dude just walk to his scooter, get back on, and drive off. And I mean, it's just like you see in the movie. So like car bombs are still going off down there. And so I've watched dudes get, executed right in front of me. So there was this nightclub that we went to that was pretty cool. The next time we went down, I was like, hey, let's go back to the nightclub. And they're like, no, we can't go there. I'm like, why? He's like, it's shut down. I was like, what happened? He's like, oh, well, a rival, didn't like what was going on. So when they were all lined up to go in that night or whatever, I guess somebody had somebody ride by and throw grenades at, at the line of people out front to keep, shut their down. So like, it's wild down there.
Yeah. And this was still at the time when there was still violence in Colombian cities.
Yes.
Now all of that's done.
Really?
Even in Cali, it's done. It's all in the periphery. It's all in the jungle between like the ex-guerrillas who now just became drug traffickers.
Yeah.
They made a peace deal with the government, and now there's all these different factions in the south, in the southeast, in the port of Buenaventura. Like it's all the rural areas now that have that kind of violence. But back then, even back in 2007, 2008, Cali was still super violent.
I got a lot of videos from there that I took. The feds took a lot of them. They wouldn't give them back to me when they took my computers. They gave me quite a few of them. I got pictures of one of Pablo Escobar's houses down in Colombia. I've got pictures of being like out in the jungles, like some wild stuff. We went to this restaurant and ate up in the mountains, up in the jungle. And everybody says you don't go up in the jungle, like up in this area, like an out thing. But they had a ranch up like in the jungle, up in the mountains or whatever, ranch up there. So we ate at this place. And I want to say it was like a week or two later, my boy tells me like, hey, do you realize the FARC came in there and took everybody? Like they kidnapped everybody at this restaurant, like went in there and held everybody and took them into the jungle and kidnapped them. Like that's how serious it is there.
That's the reason. Yeah.
So,
So you were, you basically put your hand up and said, I'm out. I retire.
Yeah. So that also too. So during the last couple shipments and what was going on, my intel was telling me that law enforcement was kind of on my operation a little bit. Because the reason why we were going to start moving from the ice chest and not going to the islands, because my sources were telling me that law enforcement was started catching on to what was going on. It's kind of like a spot that kind of got skipped over a little bit because we were switching up due to the amount of drugs, but I also didn't want to go to the island no more because my sources are saying that somebody was talking, and to this day, I'm going to do a podcast with one of the guys, law enforcement guys, but he still won't tell me who it is. So apparently it has to be somebody really good or somebody, I don't know why. Normally they gave up everybody else to me, but some reason they won't tell me who this person is.
There was DEA on the island in the Bahamas that was looking
They
at
won't
you?
tell me nothing.
Oh, wow.
So all I know is that they were on to my operation trying to figure me out.
For sure.
I came in one time towards the end, we came in loaded. And as we're coming in Jupiter Inlet, one of the sheriff boats was coming out. We're going to the inlet. He comes, he turns in right behind us. So we're going in, and there's like Tiger Woods places right here and stuff. So like there's a canal that veers off, and you come in. There's a road with railroad tracks, and it kind of veers again, and you make the left to the boat ramp there. And time we start making that left, the helicopter's flying above us. Still got the sheriff boat behind us. So I tell my boys, I'm like, listen, the boat ramp's kind of crowded, and there's people on the dock. I'm like, do not say nothing. We don't know who's who on this thing. They could be agents acting as guys that are tying up a boat or fishing. I'm like, we don't know, so don't say nothing. By now, our stomachs are just in our throats. Like we're just silent. We're not even talking. We pull up. You see two deputies across the parking lot. I'm just like, dude, it's on. Like, I'm waiting for everybody to just jump out on us. I'm loaded down. So we load the boat up. We pull out. And I'm like, they haven't pulled us over. The cops didn't get in behind us. So I'm like, dude, this is crazy. So I literally start driving to go park the boat at the place. I'm like, we're not unloading the trucks off. We're not doing nothing. We don't know if it's surveillance or what. Like, we're not doing it. So we park the boat. We leave. Nothing happens. So I was sitting there like, holy, this is crazy. So I go back in the middle of the night. We get the drugs off the boat. Nothing happened. So I'm like, dude, this is wild. So we're planning another trip. And my boy tells me like, so we're riding around. I had this Jeep, lifted up Jeep, and we ride around on Sundays. And I'm at the gas station going to put some gas in this thing. And one of my cousin's boyfriends flies into the parking lot. It's like, hey, man, I've been trying to find you. I did not want to call you, dude. He's like, listen, your next door neighbors to one of your buildings has, we knew one of the sons. And was like, hey, they raided your place last night. And I'm like, what? So I'm like, what do you mean raiding? He's like, dude, I don't know. You need to go talk to him. So I show up at his place, and his dude won't answer, won't tell me nothing. Like, he's like, I don't want to talk to you. So I go find the son, and the son's like, listen, we got surveillance. My dad had in his shop, they have like race cars and stuff. Yeah. And he has like a bed there, so he'll get drinking too much or whatever, and he'll just crash out in his little office apartment. And he has surveillance cameras. Said he woke up in the middle of the night to take a piss, and he seen like flashlights on this big TV thing. So he's like, "What the hell's going on?" He opened the door, like, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" And they're like, "What? Who are you? What are you doing?" Put a flashlight in his face. How you know where I am? It was like my surveillance camera. So then they had a deputy sit there and put a flashlight in the camera, so he couldn't see what was going on. So when they left, and they said there was a guy running around naked, and they were trying to find him. Stay inside or whatever. They gave him some story. So we watched the surveillance. You'll see a van pull up, and you see these two guys get out of the van. Side door pops open. Two guys jump out with his bag, his duffel bag, and they have DEA written across them. And then you can see him go out of surveillance up towards where my boat was at. Yeah. So apparently they were putting something on my boat. So I'm like, wow, let's go do it. Let's set these up. So I get on my phone. I tell my boys, I'm like, hey, listen, be ready at 3:30 in the morning. My boy said the fishing's good. So I went and got the boat around 11 o'clock, and I brought it back to the house, and I took a water hose and sprayed the inside of it. And the reason why I did that is because after 10 o'clock, we get humidity dew sets in real good. So everything covered wet anyways, but I wanted to make sure it was going to be good and wet. So around 3:30 in the morning, I woke up. I told my boys, I went and seen them. I was like, hey, listen, don't get ready. We're not going nowhere. It's just a setup. So 3:30 in the morning, I get up, and there's footprints. You can see like wet footprints where they left little dirty marks in it. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, they were in my boat. Wow. So I took the boat to my boys' shop, and we backed in and closed the bay and locked it up and went home, went to bed. We tore that bitch apart. We could not find this. We could not find the tracking device in it. Could not find it.
But it was probably in there.
It was in there.
Yeah.
So what we did was, we did it one more time, but this time I didn't go through all the steps of seeing if they did or not. We hauled ass and went fishing. We didn't even go, we just went to the Bahamas and fished the banks, and we came back. And when I was coming back, they were waiting for me. So two of the 37-foot cutters, the Midnight Expresses, which was known for drug smuggling back in the day. So now U.S. Customs took that company, put the owner in prison, Midnight Express, got put in federal prison for life.
Wow.
And now they have his boats for their custom
Drug
boats.
interdictions.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the 2 Midnight Expresses come up, 37 footers with the quads or trips on the back. And then one had like a 50 cal on the front of it, dude. And I seen them coming. So as we're coming in, we're about 2 miles from the inlet. And I seen like these boats coming like with lights on them, dude. So I like try to like veer a little bit and I like trim the motors where it shoots up the rooster and gets you the fast. I start taking off, dude. They get me. And I was acting like I was running from them in a way. So they get close and I throttle down. They come up and they get on board and they make us like put our hands on top of our head, interlock them, and they get and put like held us a certain way in front of the boat. And I remember like kept turning around looking, and he kept like, "What are you doing? I told you to look forward or whatever." And I watched him put a little black bag on my boat, something like they're setting me up. And they get on the boat and they took my 2 other boys and set him down on the back. And these were boys I didn't drug smuggle with. It's just we went fishing, you know, just went fishing or whatever. So they set them down and they're like, what in the is going on? So I'm thinking the cops are going to like, you know, take my boat in, pull it in. So they're like, no, you're driving. So I'm driving. So I have 3 cops on my boat, you know, customs, DA customs on my boat. And they got their guns drawn on us all the time. So I throttle the boat, get in it. They take both their boats and put them on both sides. So the front of their boats are about middle ways on my boat. And I swear to you, seas were a little rough that day. They kept their boats within 12 to 18 inches from like sounds from boat. As my boat's working like this, they're working. I don't remember them hitting my boat one time, kept it that close. We came in and I'm heading to the Coast Guard because we went out of Fort Pierce. And so we went in and I head to the Coast Guard station and they're like, nah, you ain't there. We're not going there. I'm like, well, where we're going? They're like, where'd you park at? We know where you park. So we pull over. It's right across from Little Jim Bridge. And there's like a bar across the street and we pull in. It's got 4 boat slips. They already had 2 of them shut down. And there's 17 or 19 agents waiting. And literally a crowd. And the time I was done, there was probably 400 people. And I'll never forget, we're sitting on the end of the little floating docks. They're tearing my boat apart. They found my buddy's one hitter, little pot one hitter. And they're tearing this boat apart.
Did they go through the tanks?
No, I didn't have no dive tanks on there.
Oh, okay. It would have been interesting to see if they had. Do you know what I mean?
They knew about the dive tanks because they said something about it to me eventually. That's what I'm saying. I didn't know who the source was because it was like, if the source was that good, why didn't they ever bust me?
Right.
That's what threw me off. So they were tearing the boat apart. And then I remember 17 or 19 of them because one would come up and be like, hey, Jason, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, I'm not answering your questions. After the third one, I'm like, y'all quit talking to me. They just kept trying to come up and be my friend and talk to me. And I think it was to see if they can get something different out of me. So they would never talking to my other buddies. And they kept like, they pat us down, run the dogs through us, run the dog on thing. They got drills, pulling every latch, pulling everything they can, cutting all the caulking on every, I mean, like, they're tearing my boat to pieces. So this goes on for a while. They go up, they go back to the boat, they started on it again. By then, it's like 2 hours in. So I'm like, dude, this is getting crazy. So I'm like, I got to use the bathroom. So they're like, okay. So I walk over behind the little dumpster to let me go. Meanwhile, they've already patted me down and ran the dog to me twice. Time I leave, they want to pat me down and run the dog on me one more time. I'm like, dude, this is getting crazy. So as I walk over behind the dumpster, I take a piss because there's too many people by the bathrooms over here and I'm not going. There's this white, I'll never forget, Yukon, like on the stock chrome 20-inch rims that they have or whatever. And it was totally murdered out windows. And I just remember it just pointing right at my boat and all the other agent unmarked cars were everywhere else. But this one was like front and center. And as I'm walking back, he gets out and it was just like bald dude, goatee, big belly on him. Yeah. And he's like, you come here.
Dog the bounty hunter.
Yeah. Something like that, a little different, but bald. And he's like, you come here. And I look behind me, I'm like, who are you talking to? There's nobody behind me. I'm like, which one? Point him out. He's like, come here, you dumbass. And he said something like that to me. So I walked up and he says, so you going to tell me where these drugs are at? I said, I don't do drugs, sir. And he's like, I know they're on that boat. I said, sir, there's nothing on that boat. He says, so you're not going to help me today? I said, no. He says, well, I got something for you. He says, I know you got some other troubles coming down the pipeline event, coming out. So apparently something was going on, and I'm like, well, listen here, dude. I said, I don't know. He said, but you can help me out and I can make a lot of things go away. I said, well, I don't have nothing, sir. And so he got mad and I said, you done with me? And he said, yeah. So I walked back down to my boat and he calls all the guys up. And I remember him saying, he had that little bag with a couple chunks of everything and he throws it down and he's like, you're going to tell me that's all you found on that effing boat. Go find all them drugs on that boat now. So they tear my boat apart again. So eventually, on the way in, I had called my attorney.
Mhm.
I forgot this part. So I called my attorney and I had my phone and I'm like, because I got an agent here and an agent right there behind me. So I kind of get my phone and I hit Brooke. And then I put up my thing. I see if she answers. And like, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, I'm calling my family, letting them know I'm back. Like, chill out. I'm like, Brooke, they got me. If you don't hear from me, you know what to do. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. The U.S. Customs has got me in the DEA. So so she's on the whole, phone trying to figure out what's going on with me because I'm missing for 4 hours.
Mhm.
And so they finally searched the boat one more time and they're done. They're like, okay, you can go. And here's my little arrogance, cockiness. So, I'm young, brand new F-250, badass offshore boat. I backed the boat, chain in, and I'm sitting there when my blue smoke, the tires coming up or whatever. And I told them one day if they work hard enough, they can have something nice like this.
Wow.
I'm just like, whatever.
So the writing was on the wall. You got out of the game.
Yeah.
They were going to pop you eventually, just like they do. It's a cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
What did you tell your Colombian connect you were out?
So I made a trip down there because at this point, I have the money. I'm laundering the money. I'm laundering money through renovating houses, starting businesses. So now I got other avenues of income coming in. So a lot of people ask me how I launder money. I would literally buy a house. I would finance a house, like find one need a lot of renovations, and I would put the least amount of money I could put down on it. I start out laundering my money is buying like boats, cars, stuff, small things you could pay cash.
Yep.
And all I wanted was a check back. I didn't care if I lose a little bit of money on it.
Of course.
It just wanted that. So I got enough money, checks, put in the bank because they don't question checks.
No.
So now I can finance a house. So I finance a house and then it needs $100,000 renovation. I put $100,000 of drug money into it because they don't know what you did to it. They just know you bought it and all of a sudden you might get a good deal, did some renovation. And so I started laundering my money that way. Pool businesses, lawn businesses are great because in a pool business, the equipment is cheap. Then you can go to other pool companies and buy all their accounts. They'll sell them to you for $500, $1,500 account. So you give them cash,
right?
Buying their accounts. Now you have a revenue coming in.
Yeah.
So you start buying your chlorine, your chemicals, half of your gas. So like say you have like $3,000 a week in expense, just saying.
Yeah.
1,500 of it you're going to pay in cash.
Right.
The other you're going to run to your business so it looks like you're costing something. So you're laundering even more money. Now you got all this legit stuff. So I have other stuff going on.
Yeah.
So go down to Colombia and I tell them, hey, this is the deal, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, listen, find another way. Like everything's good on this end. They
don't want you to quit.
They don't want me to quit because they're like, well, the thing is how often do you find running into somebody that has a way to get something in a port and you expose something?
Of course.
They're looking for 1 million of these because at the end of the day, if you think about it, I've never heard at all the time I did in prison, besides the Flores brothers, that actually had like doing something big. Everybody's doing 100, 200, 300 kilo things and they have multiple ways they're getting it in. I've never really heard a story where they're getting hundreds of keys in one way.
Yeah.
It's always doing 20, 30, 50 keys all done to small different ways, low key, and they're ending up with 500 at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, they had a drug route and they don't want you to quit. Were you scared to let them know that you were out? Like, how did you eventually let them know, like, hey, no, the answer is no?
At this point, I wasn't 100% all the way out. It just became to the point that I was done mentally, but I was still, the options were on the table trying to find another way. Like, can we do this without this happening? And then the other business opportunity came, and that was the problem.
So we're going to go over to Patreon to talk about. Jason, that was incredible, man. That's like, I mean, yeah, we haven't heard a story like that. What eventually, did you hang on to any of that money? Did you hang on like years later?
Okay, so
like what's been the aftermath? What's your life now?
Okay, so I'm going to explain this to you. So the thing is like people always ask, is there any money left over? So what the feds don't take, your attorneys are going to take. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was at the gas pump one day and one of the guys that I asked advice on how to do the drug smuggling, because he went to the feds. And he's like, I've been waiting to bump you. This dude will not talk on the phone for nothing. And he does not want to be seen at my house. So he catches me at a gas station. He's like, I've been waiting to run into you. He goes, I heard you're going to take the feds to trial. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you're an idiot. Don't do it. He's like, listen, take a plea deal and just do your time and get it over with. And I'm like, no, this. And we're going to talk about why I took it. He says, let me explain something to you how the feds work. He says, what they're going to do is, he says, they figured out kind of how much money you made. They've been doing this for a long time. So they have a mathematical equation, kind of a roundabout number.
Yep.
Then they're going to say a normal person in this lifestyle spends this amount of money. So they're going to figure out kind of what you have left through wiretaps and everything else. So they, he said they're going to come up with it. Then they're going to tell your attorneys like, hey, listen, this is your attorneys. This is what he's got left, blah, blah, blah. And I talk about in my TikToks and stuff about how they corrupt your attorneys and why your attorneys turn on you because you pay them cash.
Yeah.
So what they'll do is they'll let you hire an attorney, and then they're going to come to your attorney when they're fighting for you and everything else and be like, so you know where he's getting his money from? And they're going to, of course, they're going to be like, no, we don't know.
Yeah.
So they're going to say, well, listen, here's the deal is, because if you're not cooperating right off the rip and you hire an attorney and they start filing motions, they're going to approach them and say, hey, listen, you know where the money's coming from? And they're going to say, no, we don't. And they're going to say, listen, if we can prove one penny of that money's ill-gotten gains, we're going to hit you with money laundering.
Attorney.
Yes. And I know this from a source. It happened to my attorney. So I had Young Thug's attorney before Young Thug did, Brian Steele out of Georgia. And he laid down on me. And
what does laid down on you mean?
Laid down means he quit, fighting, fighting. So somebody, a good source from their inner circle, had contacted somebody close and said that the feds had went to him and said that if you don't make him lose a trial or take a plea deal, we'll hit you with money laundering if he wins, because we know that he gave you ill-gotten gains. So
the system is so dirty.
You're never going to hear that story from nobody else.
Dirty.
And that's how it works. So like the wiretaps in my whole situation during the drug smuggling days, they were never able to get me on the wiretap. And the reason why is because, TikTok again in the videos, they say, oh, you can't do the email things. Well, why didn't they ever get me on the emails? Why didn't they ever know? The only reason why they knew about the email things is because when they took my computers later on and through, whatever, they found out. But they still didn't know how it all works. But they can't stop it. And another thing that you got to realize is your wiretaps. Wiretaps go down to, they have to investigate you. There's only two ways they can get a wiretap. Is if it's too dangerous, you can look it up. It's too dangerous to surveillance you. So like cartels are really dangerous. So they'll go to the judge and say, hey, judge, we can't intercept him or get close because it's too dangerous to put our agents in there to get killed. Or what they say is they say, hey, we've surveillanced him for months. We can't get nothing, but we know something's going on. We need a surveillance. And then he'll prove it. And then every 2 weeks they have to go back in front of him. So the way to beat them is every 2 weeks you got to get a new burner phone. Yep. But when people cooperate, you can't beat a cooperation because every time you get a new phone, guess what they got?
The number.
They got the number.
Yeah, that's the hardest
person's
part.
Like, whatever.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day,
they could do nothing without snitches. They could do nothing without snitches.
There's nothing they can do without somebody cooperating. Cops are not cops no more. I seen you do a podcast with Fresh, the boys out of Miami.
Myron.
Byron. So he's a pretty cool cat. Love his things, the red pill thing. Yeah. So you asked him a question on something about like cooperative, like do y'all, if you don't have somebody that cooperates or, somebody working with you, how do you do it? And he's like, oh, police and ways. No, I don't know no cop. All the cops I know, you can ask my girl, they all talk to me. They all shake my hand to this day. They all like, dude, your stories are great. We follow all your content. We love it. And he's like, copying is not, we don't do that no more. All we do is just flip people.
Yeah.
Because that's all we do.
The drug dealers are the cops now.
Yeah. So he's like, listen, Jay, why am I going to go do cop work when all I got to do is flip somebody? He's like, I don't want to go out there and work. He goes, dude, all I do is look at somebody, target them, be like, okay. And, and that's the thing about it is it's like, you just got to stay on top of your game and you got to think about what you're doing. Because wiretaps, I go into like the wiretap thing. So people tell me all the time they can't break into iPhones. I watched him plug my iPhone into a thing, and literally within 5 minutes, they were strolling in my iPhone. I mean, I got my iPhone number mixed up. I think it was a 5 at the time. They took it in 2011. So whatever the iPhone was at that time. Yeah. And they said that like, back then they could do whatever. No, they didn't have AI and all the technology now. AI should be able to hack anything within seconds. It's so fast. So people argue about me with that. And I watched with my own eyes. I watched the feds. It gave the content right in. I mean, look at that terrorist guy out there in Santa Barbara or wherever in California that they went to iPhone and iPhone said, we're not going to get in it or whatever. And they wanted you to believe it. Then they just hired a hacker to get into it.
Yeah, they got in there.
So if they could get get in there, come on. You didn't think they didn't figure out a back way and they didn't now. So it's all a lie. They want you to believe it.
My man, where can we're going to go over now to the bonus because we're going to talk about the pill journey and how you eventually do go to the feds, where can they find you on TikTok? Plug all your socials because you are
TikTok
one of the
is-
best follows right now.
Okay, so 8up Jason is my TikTok and 8up J on Instagram.
8up Jason
Yes.
and 8up J.
It's the
on
letter
Instagram.
8, J,
Got it.
up and J. The reason I do it is my last name is pretty hard to spell, but you can put in Jason Votrobek on anything and it does pop up.
Yeah, and those links are going to be in the description. And we're hoping to see a series out of this, man.
Oh, there's going to be one soon.
Thank you so much for coming in, dude.
Thank you.
That was
Appreciate
sick.
it.
We'll see you over at the Patreon, patreon.com/TheConnectShow.